Okay, I will call back to order the Yreka City Council meeting for January 3rd, 2023. We took a brief break at 6:31 and came back at 6:38 p.m. All right, and thank you for getting us back up. As I was stating before we got the interruption, is just a reminder that public comment is for you guys to come up and talk about any problems you want to talk about, what we're doing good, the bad we're doing, whatever. When we get to a specific agenda item, you are to talk to us about the specific agenda item that is the issue we're on at that time. It does not get, don't go into other things. Get right to the point of what we are on. Because, I did dismiss somebody last week, sorry, and got positive feedback and negative feedback. That's not that's not me wanting to be the bad guy by having someone sit down just because they can't get to the item on the agenda. So I just want to clarify that for everybody. So thank you. All right. Special presentations and our announcements. This time's slot is for informational presentations, appointments, or awards to be presented by the city council or to the city council.
None at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Number 3, this is public comments. Public participation is welcomed and invited at all city council meetings. This time is set aside for residents to address city council on matters listed on the consent agenda, as well as other items not included on the regular agenda. If your comments concern an item noted on a regular agenda item, please address the council when that item is open for public comment. The city requests that persons addressing the Yreka City refrain from making personal, slanderous, profane, or disruptive remarks. Council members, when recognized by mayor, may ask questions to the presenter, but no action may be taken by the Yreka City Council during public comment. Sorry, my throat's dry. Public comment section of the meeting. Under the Brown Act, the Yreka City Council is prohibited from discussing or taking action on any item not listed on the posted agenda. This time is set aside for citizens to address the Yreka City Council on matters listed on the consent agenda, as well as other items not included on the regular agenda. If your comments concerns an item noted on the regular agenda, please address the council when that item is open for public comment. Please speak into the microphone from the podium. The podium electronically adjusts up and down to accommodate the speaker. If you need additional assistance or special accommodations, e.g. remote microphone, please notice the city clerk prior to the start of the meeting or for arrangements. Please state your name for the record prior to providing your comments. Please address the city council as a whole. If you have documents to present, please provide a minimum of 7 copies. And please limit your remarks to 5 minutes. Public comment period is not intended to be a question and answer period or conversations with county or city staff. Good evening.
I'm Jan Osborne, Yreka. I am here to review some comments that I sent to each of the council members, the city manager, and the chief of police before the December 20th meeting. I had intended those comments would be read at the meeting to, I thought, help identify the man who assaulted me on Greenhorn Dam on December 14th. They were not read. Now, that's another issue of free speech that I will deal with at a later date. But tonight, I want to read some of those excerpts, especially this description of the man, and hope that anybody who is here or who hears this, if they watch the YouTube broadcast that may occur after this. Anyway, I'm an 81-year-old resident of Yreka. And on December 14th, I was assaulted on the dam at Greenhorn by a dog owner who did not have his dog on a leash and who objected to my request that he put the dog on the leash and keep it out of my personal space. I'm not going to go into the details of the assault because I don't think I can emotionally do that. But I did call the YPD from the dam, and within 10 minutes, Officer William Strello responded. The police report shows that the man could be charged, if he can be identified, with battery on a person and property damage. By the time Officer Strello got there, the man and the man who had been with him while I was being assaulted had left. The man with him had gone south and he had gone north and up over the covered bridge. The description that I had and gave to Officer Strello was pretty sketchy because I was very emotional. The man himself was a small white male with sloping shoulders. He had a hoodie on. And it was a very cold day. Fortunately, I had on very heavy coats, so I wasn't as injured as I could have been. The man that was with him was about medium height, had very long grayish white hair, and was dressed all in black. He had black pants, black shirt with white lettering on it, and a white hat. He did not intercede during the assault and disappeared before Officer Strello arrived. This is my update. Since that day, and the information didn't get out to people because it wasn't read here, and it did get out through me. But on Sunday, January 1st, I was at Greenhorn again doing my regular Sunday walk. As I approached the covered bridge, I saw two young men standing there and they were doing something called, they later told me was magnet fishing. So I stopped to learn about that. And as we were talking and looking, I looked onto the dam where I would be walking later. And there were those two men, the two men who had been there and the one who had assaulted me on December 14th. They were standing about in the same place, the middle of the trail, out in front of where the concrete and bricks, that concrete and rocks and the plaque that just tells about the dam. I waited on the bridge and didn't approach. Shortly, just as happened before, the man in black walked off to the south and the man in the hoodie came walking towards the bridge. I decided I was going to stay on the bridge because there were some other people there and I felt relatively safe because of that, and get a glimpse of this man and try to get my description better. That happened. He walked by me. I saw him. He's a bearded man, not a beard quite like Paul's, but Paul's is neatly trimmed. It's just gray, but about the same color. He was wearing a hoodie, dark neutral color, black denim jeans, and hiking boots of that really yellow tan color with that really stick out when you see them. I have a pair of them. But at any rate, that's an additional information about his description. He walked on across the bridge. And after he was out of sight, I got on the trail that goes up to Greenhorn Road and climbed over the guardrail and started walking toward the entrance exit road because I hoped to see him drive out and get a description of his car and perhaps his license plate to give to the police. As I walked, I also called YPD and I told them who I was and that I had been assaulted on the dam on December 14th. And the man who had done the assault was in the park at the time. Could she send an officer? And she said, there's no one available. I continued walking, never saw a car come out, but I saw the man and his dog. They walked out of the park and across Greenhorn Road, down through that little ditch and then started up that hill that goes right across.
Time. Thank you. Time.
Pardon?
Time. Thank you. Your 5 minutes. Thank you.
I have one more comment.
Real quick.
I want you all to know that this is what Yreka is like. And one of the main responsibilities of a city government is for people's public safety. An 81-year-old woman should be able to walk at Greenhorn and not be assaulted. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Osborne. Any other public comments?
I have several issues that I'd like to bring up. This is during public comment. There's 4 of them. One of them in particular is the lighting in the parking lot out here. There's 2 of the lights that are out. They've been out at least since October. I know that it's been reported to the but planning or who is it? Who does that?
Public Works, and could
I-
you just for the record, this is
Oh,
Louise
I'm sorry.
Gliata.
I'm Louise Gliata, Yreka, I'm sorry. So I know it's been reported to Public Works, but one that I'm particularly concerned about is the one that's near the entrance here. Because when we go out at night, it's hard to see where the curb is. And I think that's a public safety issue. Someone's going to fall and break something and end up suing the city. So I don't know why that can't be taken care of, because it was reported in October and I know it's since been reported. And then also I talked to Councilman Drake Davis today and reported it to him also. The other issue I'd like to bring up is the sidewalks in Yreka, in particular, the sidewalks in front of Ming's. They're in terrible condition. Every time I walk that way, I have to look down at my feet to make sure I don't slip and fall. I don't know who's responsible. I don't know if it's the store owners or the city of Yreka. But if we want to make a good impression on tourists and them to think well of Yreka, I think we need to fix those sidewalks so someone doesn't fall and get hurt. The other issue I'd like to bring up is the city webpage. I think it would, the last meeting I went to, we talked about improving communication for the citizens of the city. And I think that would be real helpful if you could put on your Facebook page and your city page how to listen to or watch the meetings after they're done. I just recently found out that you're on Channel 4 if you have cable. So those are avenues in which citizens could stay informed, even though it's after the fact. Also being on the Facebook page, because a lot of people do use Facebook. We don't have a newspaper anymore, so to speak. Hardly ever comes out, and the news is old, and hardly anyone is taking it anymore. And we don't have a radio station anymore. So I think that would be one way to encourage public participation and a communication with the public. That would be a positive thing if you could do that. Also, it was suggested to me by Councilwoman Baker that maybe you could put that in the little newsletter that goes out with our bill. That would be helpful. And from me doing the Patriots meetings, I know that if you don't lay it out step by step on how to do it, because most people are intimidated, if you could do that to make it really easy, then more folks, I'm sure, would do it. So that would be a suggestion I would make. The other one is, I recently found out that you're on the TV and it was YouTube. And I know that you had technical problems in the last meeting, but it's really hard to hear all you council members when you're speaking. In particular, the mayor, he has a softer voice than all of you. The person I can hear the best is Jason. And so if you could do something about that, because if I were to listen to it on the telephone, you know, like some people call in, or on my laptop, I can only turn my laptop up so high. I can turn my TV up higher. So that would be helpful too, if you could address that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I will say, for one thing that is getting corrected from me, Jason can speak on it, or city manager on something else if he wants to. They do have a special microphone coming because I do have a soft voice, so it is in. We just have to get a new cable. So hopefully you'll hear me better with the new device coming for me. Because I'm special, I guess. I'm a little softer voice. Did you have any other comments, city manager?
No,
Okay.
we will get that squared away.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Louise.
Good evening, council members. Excuse me, Jerry Stalker, Yreka resident. I'd just like to continue the conversation about the lady that was assaulted. Approximately a week ago, business employee was assaulted across the street from our store. And you know, it's kind of the same thing. Just what are we going to do about it? I'm curious, Chief, can I look back, Chief, if there's a place where we can look and see?
If you can direct us, and then if
Pictures?
the chief can
Okay, sorry.
come down and direct,
I know it's kind
comment
of
if
a
you
question
like,
for him.
but
If
direct us
there's a
first,
place
please.
where we can see pictures of folks that have assaulted others in the community. Patty, for example, the person that assaulted the employee across the street from us had been in our store before. So Patty knows what she looks like, but I don't. So I'm wondering if there's a place that we can go to see the criminal element of what's going on the streets of Yreka. I think a long time ago, we talked about there's actually multiple facets of the homeless, and I'm not saying that the people that assaulted this lady were homeless, but it's been something on my mind for a while. To go back, circle back, there's the the mental illness, the down on their luck, and the criminal element, and the multitude of the three of those. From me coming here for months and months now, I think you all understand that I want to help the not the criminal element. Excuse me. The mentally ill element of it and the people in need. As far as the criminal element of it goes, I'm more interested in squashing them like a roach. Anyway, every single council meeting, there's always important things to talk about. And I want to reiterate again how important it is to stay on this one particular subject. It's going to be here tomorrow, it's going to be here next year, and it's going to be here 10 years from now. And as a city, you know, the one thing that always comes to my mind is New York and Rudy Giuliani and how he really conquered the criminal element of New York. And I'm really uneducated on how it works with the DA in Siskiyou County and how we enforce our laws. But I'm hoping that we can all agree on being a pro squash the roach kind of community where we want to look out for and protect the people that are, you know, trying to do good things around the city, and not the people that have ill intentions or bad intentions. I have a real disdain for that. The first thing that I thought of, if somebody came into our store and beat Patty up, I couldn't handle that. You know, the first thing I would do once I figured out that that person wasn't in jail is I'm not a violent person, but I would go let them know, don't ever step back in my store again, or you will be met with me. You can't beat people up and expect to just wander around and not suffer the consequences of that. So please do something. Please take it seriously to try to protect the ladies of the community. You know, I can protect myself, but she can't.
Thank you. I don't think so.
Don Mariatri. You hear me?
I'm not hearing you
No.
through the microphone.
No. You can hear? I don't think the microphone's on. I can hear her, but the microphone's not on.
Now?
Broke out right there for a minute. First, sorry.
Thank you. Don Mariatri. I do want to talk about the homeless. Also, it just almost devastated me when I heard the news broadcast say the two people that died because they wouldn't go to a shelter. The night they died, there was no shelter offered. And I think that needs to be retracted. And I think that needs to be known so that everyone who heard that doesn't just think that these homeless are just ungrateful and they wouldn't go to a shelter if we had one. We don't have one. And if we did have one that wasn't a pop-up shelter every now and again, and it was reliable, maybe they would all start to go. And then the second thing is, there's a lot of them up on that hill. And I'm going to play the devil's advocate because I'm really not liking how many are up on that hill right by our water tower. Not okay. And I am going to play the devil's advocate because I want them taken care of. I just bought a bunch of stuff to take care of, help them. And I know they need help. And we have 4 elements. We have drug addicts, but we also have absolutely no programs here to help any kind of addict, which is not okay. We have the people who are completely burned out of homes that we also have a housing crunch. I know we are trying to help that housing crunch, but we need to work harder. We need a shelter. for cold. We need a shelter for warm because heat kills more people than cold every year. And that's a fact. So I'm trying as hard as I can to be the Chihuahua. And I can't, I can't pick up stuff and bring to the big dog. I need the big dog to get up and do something for these people. So please consider doing a retraction with the news because it's not okay for everybody to think these people died because they were just too lazy to go to a shelter and be alive. Because we didn't have a shelter the night they died. And we don't have a shelter now. Thank you.
Thank you, Don Marie. Any other public comments? No? All right. Public comment follow-up. This is time for city council or the city manager to respond to public comments and may direct staff to prepare a report or place an item. Excuse me. Agenda future item. Voice.
Mr. Mayor, this is the city manager, Jason Ledbetter. I don't have public comment follow-up, but I did want to advise the city council and yourself that we would like to pull item E from the consent agenda when you get to that. Just because it's missing some of the backup as a formality. It'll come back around on the 17th.
Yes, I'll go ahead and go to the council members to, if they're okay with removing item E on the agenda. I'll go to Councilman Davis. Item E, 5E on the consent agenda. There's a request for removal for item E off the consent agenda. Are you okay with that? Councilman Davis? Yes, remove it until the next meeting. Councilman Baker?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Mayor Pro Tem McCoy, let's go ahead with me, okay? And then Pro Tem McCoy would like to address.
Ms.
Ms.
Gliato,
Gliato.
this comes up a lot in Yreka and other cities on the sidewalks since Julius Caesar and early Rome. Sidewalks have, he's the man that started it, but sidewalks are, although they belong to the city, they are the responsibility of the persons of the homeowner or the business owner. So, and that's, like I said, that's been around for about 1800 years. So, and I know people ask about, when I was on planning commission for the, I don't know, 10 or 12 years, people would always ask about it, and we looked at it and it goes way, way back. So, so as far as, talking to businesses, that may be something that as we go through and start looking at things, in sidewalks in business areas that we go and say, hey, can you help us here by, redoing this? So thank you for bringing it up.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. And I will address, I just want to state that I am having continuous meetings every Friday with our city manager and sometimes our police chief. They'll join in every other week with us. So we are tackling a lot of problems you guys are addressing. So I know it's hard to, say be patient, but we are working on many of the things that you guys are coming up talking to us about. We are not just ignoring your comments or the problems we know that are going on in our city. And actually, all of us meet with our city manager, but I meet with him on Fridays, and we do call in other staff members to address these issues. So we are working on it. No, it doesn't seem like it. It's a slow pace. And unfortunately, that's government. So, all right. I'll go back to the consent agenda with the removal of E. All matters listed in the consent agenda are considered routine and non-controversial and will be enacted by one motion unless any member of the council wishes to remove an item for discussion. A, approval ratification of payments issued from December 12th, 2022 through December 26th, 2022. B, approval of minutes of the regular meeting held December 20th, 2022. C, cash balances, investment, fiscal performance reports for September 2022. D, adopting of corrected appropriations limit, resolution 2023-01 for fiscal year 22-23. E, skipping that one. F, continuation of urgency resolution 2021-51 remote public meetings. G, continuation of urgency ordinance number 864 fireworks. H, waive full text reading of all ordinances of the agenda. Ordinances shall be introduced and accepted by title only. Recommend city council action, recommended city council action. Motion to adopt the consent agenda for the city council of the city of Yreka as presented with the removal of number E, of course. I will go out to public comment. Apologize, my voice is really scratchy all of a sudden. There's no public comment. I will go to the council members and I will go to Councilman Davis. Okay. Oh, do you have a question or do you have a motion? Question, comments?
Wondering about item G.
The fireworks ordinance,
Yeah,
city manager.
so what we basically, if we pass that consent agenda saying that there's going to be no more fireworks in Yreka, or we're going to continue with the program that we're under?
That's continuing the, go ahead and explain, but it's continuing the current
Yeah.
adoption. Yeah.
Yeah, that's, so I think this goes back to the origin as over a year ago, I believe. That the original ordinance, an ordinance generally, it's going to take, it's a law, so it's going to take X amount of meetings before it becomes law. And so pushing up to that, this is before my tenure, the city council was concerned about fire danger during the 4th of July. And so this emergency or urgency ordinance was enacted. And I know that we've had interest from the city council to bring it back as an actual possibly adopted future long-term law or ordinance within the city. We have yet to do that. So right now, we continue to bring it back every single meeting as required, as though it still is.
Every year we bring it back,
Every meeting. Every single meeting that's on the consent agenda.
every month.
Every single meeting we have, it's on there. And then ultimately, but I do think we had interest from the mayor pro tem in the past to revisit the item as the possibility of making it a long-term actual ordinance instead of an urgency ordinance.
So making it illegal permanently has been the discussion. Making fireworks illegal in the city of Yreka is the discussion. This is just a temporary ordinance. The discussion is for further that we pass the law that fireworks will be no longer in the city of Yreka because of fire danger that we've had every year for the last, goodness, I don't know how many years, but quite a while.
Thank you.
The concern from past councils was we don't want another paradise. We don't want to be responsible for a paradise. That was the concern from the last council about 2 years ago. Two summers ago, I should say. So,
Yeah.
and that's why we only do it month to month at this point in time.
That answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Councilman Baker
I have no comments or questions.
and Pro Tem McCoy.
No.
And I have no
Thank you.
questions. Go to, I went to public comment already, right?
Yeah, I think we're looking for a motion.
For a motion. I'll go to anybody.
Councilman
Baker.
Baker here, I'd make the motion to adopt the consent agenda with the exception of item E.
I have a motion for Councilman Baker.
This is Councilman McCoy. I'll second that motion.
The second by Pro Tem McCoy. I'll go to the roll call. And actually, I will go to Councilman Baker,
Aye.
Councilman Davis. Councilman Pro Tem McCoy,
Aye.
and I, the Mayor Middleton, aye. Motion passes with the no from Davis and yay from Baker, McCoy, and Middleton. Thank you. On old business. Planning Director, agenda title. California Housing and Community Development Pro Housing Designation Program. And this is Juliana. Hi, Juliana.
Hi. So this item is being brought back to you after the last meeting, so I'm not going to really delve into much unless you have specific questions. In conversation with the city manager, there were a couple of questions I just want to address. One is that there's only 8 designated pro-housing cities right now, and they're all larger. The program didn't start accepting applications until the beginning of 2022. So most of the larger jurisdictions have applied. Excuse me. But there are other jurisdictions that are in the process of applying. And so the smallest city that's currently applying for the same designation is Larkspur in Marin County. It's 12,000 people. Ukiah is also applying, and they're sitting at about 16 to 17,000 people. Excuse me, I'm a little tired today. And so just a couple of other jurisdictions that are also applying for it, just for transparency's sake: Los Angeles County, Placer County, Tulare, San Mateo County, El Cerrito in Contra Costa County, Sacramento County, the city of Los Angeles, San Diego County, Sunnyvale in Santa Clara, Ukiah, as I mentioned before, Adelanto in San Bernardino County, San Francisco, city of San Francisco, Larkspur and Marin, Fresno, and Sonoma County are also applying. Just seemed like there needed to be additional information related to that. Other than that, I did receive a clarifying question for Council Member Baker on how disadvantaged communities are designated in a portion of this. So it's really important to identify disadvantaged communities because each California and federal department has different ways of measuring what a disadvantaged community is. For this one, I believe it is focused on the California Health and Safety Code sections, which relies on a tool that the state puts together called Cal EnviroScreen, and they're on the 4th version of that. So it's Cal EnviroScreen 4.0. They have a very lovely dashboard that's fairly easy to use that kind of outlines what goes into those determinations of making you a disadvantaged community according to a very specific definition. And so it involves a number of environmental factors, it involves socioeconomic factors, and those are all determined by state and federal regulations. A little bit more than half of the city of Yreka is considered disadvantaged under the definition, and a portion of Yreka is not considered disadvantaged under that definition. And those areas actually coordinate with the AFFH analysis that's found in the housing element, because there is a portion of our city in the northwest portion that is more affluent than the rest of the city. And so they're not classified as disadvantaged. And so if we remember back to the Prop 68 grant with the pool, one of the issues with that Prop 68 grant was that it was only for disadvantaged communities under that definition. And where Ringy Pool exists currently is in that not disadvantaged area because of the affluency of that area. And so it is a little confusing when we start talking about disadvantaged communities. And so I wanted to bring that up as kind of more of an education point, that depending on the grant, depending upon the agency, that definition changes. And so we try to address that by citing the section we're referring to or which designation we're using. So the Department of Water Resources has a very different definition of a disadvantaged community compared to the one that we have in the email. Was there any other questions that the council had that I can address before you kind of take off?
Yes, during public comment. I will go to first. I have any questions from our council members. First, I will go to Councilman Baker.
So thank you very much. I do have a question, and it may take me just a second to put all of my thoughts together so that I can ask it in a semi-intelligent manner. But for all of the categories that are listed and the potential points that have been assigned to all of the different issues, under the pro housing program, Are all of these mandatory? So that if we apply for the pro-housing designation, all of the listings that are in the agenda packet, are those actually mandatory?
Possible points that you can get. So you get the pro-housing designation when you commit to enough programs that get you to at least 30 points. And so everything that I've listed in there in eligible points are ones that correlate with goals, policies, and programs in the draft housing element that's gone through a number of public reviews. And so if you do move forward with those eligible points assigned, those are the programs you are committing to accomplish through this program. And there's timelines that we deal with on that. And so they coordinate pretty well with the general plan update and the development code update that we can bring those in and still qualify for this designation and complete those programs within the next 2 to 3 years. So that's why when we talked about at the last meeting, if you have any trepidation against some of the programs, we currently are eligible for 44 total points, which is 14 over the required to meet the program. So if there is a program that you have some concerns over, I think we've talked about the missing middle, which I did not hear back from HCD on in terms of how to interpret that program. I would just recommend that you remove it at this time. It doesn't mean you can't do it in the future, but it is, if you are going to go forward with this designation, you are committing to doing these programs or you lose the designation. So for example, if you commit to doing this program and in the next 3 years determine you don't want to do some of these programs, you can either elect to withdraw from the program itself with no, issues, or we can go through the point system and just say, we went to this item and it just didn't happen for one reason or another. We still qualify with the 30 points that we have. So it doesn't really commit you fully. It does commit you, to keep the points. So if you do want to stay in this program, if you do want extra points on the grant, you do have to move forward with the programs that you are committing to when you approve the application to go forward. Did that answer your question?
It did. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Yeah.
And is there any kind of timeline or deadline to apply for this program?
No, it's a rolling application, so you can apply at any time.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions, council members? Councilman Davis?
I kind of looked at it a little bit online. And I don't quite understand. So if we commit to the pro-housing, or whatever, the pro-housing, does that mean that all of our subdivisions and development has to be 20% or some percentage?
No.
So why do we have the pro-housing designation? Just so we can get additional funds?
So the pro-housing designation was put into effect by the state legislature to incentivize cities to do more pro-housing regulations. And so the pro-housing regulations are each of those eligible programs through the scoring matrix in the attachment. And so the reason why they want to do this is they want to award cities for trying to meet the current housing crisis. And so the program itself would give you additional points on future grant applications that the legislature has earmarked to allowing you have additional points. And so certain ones for housing and community development can range from 10 points up to 25 additional points, which when you get to those higher categories, that's a lot of points to have on a competitive grant. And we are a smaller jurisdiction. And sometimes our competitiveness is much lower than some of the larger jurisdictions like the city of San Francisco. So when we apply to the same pot of money as they are for, say, infrastructure, if we have this designation in place, we automatically get additional points on our grant and we become more competitive in the list to get those funds. So that's basically what they're trying to incentivize, is they're giving us additional points on future grant applications if we commit to doing certain pro-housing regulation. And so what HCD ended up doing is they tried to give jurisdictions a number of programs that could meet the pro-housing designation. so that you don't have to all be doing the same thing, because obviously some programs are more appropriate than others for each jurisdiction, depending on their context in the state, geographic location, political willingness, things like that. There are certain programs in here that are more appropriate or less appropriate based off of your different planning documents and different, goals you're setting for yourself. So, and again, we brought the item because the city council at the time and the planning commission at the time, along with some of the input we got from the housing element update, designated growth and designated that we needed to have more housing units in the next 8 years. And so to become more competitive and to be able to accomplish that in the next 8 years, this is a program that would be very easy to get us additional points on the grants in the future. Now, if you want to not move forward with this program, there's no issue with it. So it doesn't disqualify us from anything. It doesn't change really anything else that we're doing. It's basically a free program to get extra points on grants moving forward.
It's your time.
Also, there was a comment in the research that I did that talked about public transit. And it has to be close to these subdivisions. I don't know what we have here for public transit.
So I think
I'm close to the work that these people that are living in it have.
so. We have some enhancement factors that are in the matrix, and those are very broad additional points that you can get. They're outside of the enhancement factor 1. There are no other public transportation programs in this. So public transportation is not included in the pro-housing designation. We aren't required to change any regulations for public transit. I think what the confusion was at the last meeting is this item got combined with the REAP 2.0 grant application item. And the grant application for REAP 2.0, some of the eligible activities were public transit related, but that's not what we were going for in the proposal. So there is no public transit related to this pro-housing designation. So if you want specific, so specifically there's enhancement factor 1, which is policies that represent one element of a unified, multifaceted strategy to promote multiple planning objectives, such as efficient land use, access to public transportation, affordable housing, climate change solutions, and/or hazard mitigation. So you don't have to do all of those. It's just an enhancement factor if you're doing some of those, which we have a local hazard mitigation plan that's up to date. So we do hazard mitigation. Affordable housing is basically all in this of the pro-housing designation, as well as your housing element. And then land use, we're updating our zoning code and land use element with the general plan update. So you automatically meet this enhancement factor without doing any additional programs.
All right.
I think I have one more question.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I got a bait. Councilman Baker.
So when I was reading this, I'm looking for the page that I need, but help me to understand if I'm incorrect about this, but it was my understanding that this designation is specific to 3 programs in the state of California. One of them is the Transformative Climate Communities Program. It says they're listed at the top of page 73.
I think I know where you're going, and I can address this one. So currently, the current grants that are open that you would get points on for this current financing season is the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Grant, Infill Infrastructure Grant, Transformative Climate Communities Grant, Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program. But those are just 4 examples of several funding programs where this would get you additional points. And so those 4 are just examples from HCD, which is the Department of Housing and Community Development. For people who don't know, I'm trying to get better at acronyms this year. Those are just 4 examples of programs that they manage that they're going to secure you points for. So for example, there are other programs. So there's also a pro housing incentive pilot program, which is 26 million in state investment for the Building Homes and Jobs Trust Fund. There's several different grants that are also coming out from the Department of Water Resources that's also looking at cities that are doing pro housing designations as well. So those are just examples of some of the grants that we would get additional points on, but it doesn't compel us to apply for those grants, if that makes sense. Does that kind of help you find what page you're on?
Yes, I actually
Okay.
have it. And it's just a little bit misleading because at the top of page 73, it says based upon their adoption of pro-housing local policies shall be awarded additional points of preference in scoring of program applications for the following programs. And so the way that I read that is that this was 3 specific programs, but you're saying that there
more.
are more programs. Thank
Correct.
you.
Yeah, if you look at the additional subpoint 4, additional bonus points may be awarded to other state programs when already allowable under state law. And so pretty much every year, which with our budget bills, the legislature will go through all of their funding programs for the next couple of years. And they've been inserting the pro housing designation as an eligible additional funder. And so it's just basically, we watch every budget bill that comes through. We see what types of grants or how much they're allocating for each grant going through. And so there will be more grants that are available. And like I said before, there's 4 right now that they're awarding. And I think the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program is a new one that's come out of the federal infrastructure bill, which that one is has been allocated to have pro housing points as well. So we'll probably see more as it comes out. As California prioritizes housing units, they'll be adding this as an additional point piece for a lot of grants moving forward. That's my understanding with just the trends of California is they're trying to do the opposite of what they've done historically, which is penalize communities that are not, moving forward in a similar direction as the state legislature. They're now offering incentives for us to buy into certain programs that meet the needs of the city. So again, it's up to you though. It's not, we could still apply for these grants without having the pro housing designation. So it doesn't disqualify us from any of these things, but it does give us that additional edge without really any additional work.
Thank you.
I have a question. This is the city manager. Can you clarify at the start of this, you mentioned some counties were applying for this. Is that accurate? Entire counties are applying for this pro housing designation?
Correct. Yeah, none of the counties have been awarded at this point. I think Placer County and Tulare County are the furthest along. They've had their applications gone through initial review, and now they're responding to those initial reviews. Placer County in particular has a very, very robust housing program. It's actually one of the better, more rural-based county programs. Very lovely people there. I've worked with a couple of them. But yeah, so it's a new program. So even though they created it and authorized it in 2019 with Assembly Bill 101 at that time, it took 2 years for HCD to develop the program and the matrices that they were choosing for that program, which is pretty typical for a lot of these. It takes a little bit for the state to think up how they're going to do the program. And then they began accepting applications at the beginning of last year. And so the first city, I believe, was the city of Sacramento, which actually kind of was a really big pusher for this type of program. And then the other cities, West Sacramento, a couple of others received their designation on December 15th of 2022. So this is probably going to catch on a lot more as, jurisdictions see the program. Because a lot of the state regulations are mandating us to move in this direction. So it kind of just makes sense if they're going to give us points for doing what we already have to do. It's for me, it's very simple to get 3 points. But again, we don't have to do it. It was just something that came up.
So one of the things, before you leave, one of the things that we have an issue with in Siskiyou County, particularly in the North County, is housing. We have a lack of housing due to a myriad of things. And we have a lack of affordable housing. And I know it's always been the city's worry and its businesses worry that we can't hire and bring in, like we have a company that wants to bring in 100 employees in the next 7 or 8 years, and housing is not there for them. But in order to entice people to come here and settle, we have to have some housing. As I look at this, under section 65589.92, which is page 71, there are local incentives for finances, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now I know that we actually, in the last 8 or 9 months, we have 2 different people. I will not refer to them as developers. I'll just refer to them as local citizens that would love to put in, one would love to put in moderate income, and I think the other one is talking about moderate income housing tracts, like one of them maybe 50 to 65 homes and the other, maybe 20 to 40 homes. And one of the things that they have asked us for as a city is if we would assist them if there was grant money or anything was available. So this would be one way that we might be able to assist them, along with hopefully with others.
Yeah, that kind of delves into a different topic area that I'll cover very quickly. So one of the things we are working on right now is a vacant sites inventory that for sites that could specifically support housing
Mhm.
or mixed use development. And we're basically taking all of the grants that are available now for housing development, and we're analyzing each of the vacant sites. We also do have some adaptive reuse, which is existing commercial or residential structures that could be reused as housing. We're going through each of those kind of methodically and looking at each of the grants and seeing how well they score. And then we're going to offer up the top 5 as available and work with those property owners first. Although I have been in contact with at least one property owner to help with one of the proposals. One of the difficulties with the vacant property they're putting up is that it's really far out of town. And a lot of these programs are focused on infill development. So utilizing vacant properties within the city proper. So it makes it a little difficult for them to qualify. But yes, we are actively working with property owners who are interested outside of this program. If they would like to work with us on affordable housing. And you bring up a really good point. One of the big changes in housing regulation is that developments that are willing to put up at least 10% of the units for moderate income now qualify for these grants, which has not happened in the past. So moderate income for the city of Yreka is approximately $34,000 to $55,000. And so as we start getting to the top end of the moderate income, we're actually creating jobs for some of the more well-paid, or we're creating housing for some of the more well-paying jobs within the city.
And creating jobs for tradesmen
Correct.
at the same time.
Yes.
And I don't want to leave out, I know we have a third person who is looking at, when you say mixed use, they're looking at mixed use with some more luxury homes and some strip mall type things. Again, I'm not going to go into where it is because they'll let us know when they want that made public.
Yeah.
But that's, he has talked to me and I know he's talked to all of you. So I mean, that kind of growth, we're not going to grow a ton in the next 20 years. But I mean, if we could, if we could add 100 to 200 homes in the next 20 years, it would be wonderful because we'd have people that are not, looking for, not cop surfing, not living 2 to an apartment or 2 to a trailer or trailers on somebody's front lawn, which you see a lot of. The other thing I wanted to do was, I look at on page 72, one of the things it talks about is reducing parking requirements for sites that are zoned for residential development. And I'm assuming that's all residential development, but I think that probably speaks to ADUs and joint ADUs, because I know that's something that, I think, did that come out of, we were never able to put a mother-in-law house. When I first moved here, you couldn't put a mother-in-law house on your property because an ADU, because you didn't have the parking. And now the state has made it easier for that. That's one area where this makes it easier, I think, for the average homeowner that owns their home and wants to have their mother-in-law or father-in-law or their daughter or son come back and live with them for whatever reason. And I was also looking, it says that it reduces barriers for property owners to create those accessory dwelling units and a reduction of permit processing time. Now, I'm going to say that that is in my I've only lived, like I said, I'm a flatlander. I've only been here 37 years. That's been the number one complaint from builders is they'd like to see the permit time for processing to be less. And this seems to establish that, which would be a positive.
Well, actually, we're working on that separately. This would just give us points for an initiative that we're already doing.
Yeah. For something you're already doing. And I was looking at that just in like in the 2s and 3s, streamlining CEQA. I mean, CEQA, for anybody that goes through it, is a nightmare. I only know it because my daughter did it for 2 years with N-Plan, and that's all she did for people. She was hired to do CEQA studies. But streamlining housing development, establishment of consolidated permit processes, establishment of one-stop shopping permit processes, priority permit processes, reduced plan checks for ADUs. That right there is I mean, if you were to ask the two people that want to do, they're not doing ADUs, but if you ask them, the ones that want to do homes here, single family homes, I think they tell you that every one of those things they want.
Mhm.
Well, whether they agree or not. And then I look at another thing that they would tell you is on 3A, waiver significant reduction of development impact fees for residential development. Now, we know that the fees have not kept people from building because we know we only got 2 homes built when the council cut it in half. We got 2 homes built in how many, 3 years or 4 years or whatever. But I'm still, if you have people building 20, 30, 40, 50 homes, that might make a difference to them. And adoptions of ordinances or implementations that result in less restrictive government requirements. So, I mean, to me, looking at those things, they would be a positive, in getting the pro housing designation. It doesn't mean we're gonna, things aren't gonna change. I understand, what Councilman Davis talked about with the, we're not gonna put a bullet train in, stuff like that goes from the casino to the community center and anything like that. But to me, it seems like there are a lot of things in here that are constituents, that are builders, that are developers. Well, we really don't have a developer, I don't think, in Yreka, but that the closest thing we had to developer that our constituents are telling us we need this because we need some of the things that this brings to us. Some of it we already have, I understand that, but some of the other things that it brings in, like the CEQA process, that's invaluable. Because that could save 8 or 9 or 10 months of building, waiting to build. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Pro Tem McCoy. I have no question. Well, I'll make a comment. If I've read through it, and me being in the business, seeing it every day, we have a housing shortage. People can't find rentals. Our rentals are through the roofs. 1,100 for one. Right now, I'm renting it for a client. 1,100 for 1-bedroom apartment. Crazy. So we need the affordable housing. We need housing here. I know the city had a couple people who came up to find, apply for jobs, and they couldn't find a rental, so they declined the job. They're ready to move here, start a life, and said we can't find a rental, and they backed out. So yeah, there's some controversial things, but I think it's great and we need to move forward, my opinion. But I will go out to public comment on the agenda item. On the agenda item.
I'm a
That's a
reading
hand.
teacher. I'm quite capable of reading the agenda.
Just want to make sure.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
One of the things that I read, and I have not read that whole thing, because when I saw
I'm sorry, I'm just
by
gonna
right,
state,
pardon?
I'm just gonna state, this is Jan Osborne speaking.
Oh, I'm sorry, this is Jan Osborne. I thought you would remember me from the assault on Greenhorn, but it's still me.
Our listeners need to hear you.
What I saw words like by right. And in single family residential zones. And I'm sure you're all aware that there is a movement afoot to pretty much do away with single-family residential zones. And California is in the lead in that. I mean, the SB 9 and SB 10, those accessory dwelling units that can be added, and those were mentioned in, I forget what page, but it's when you were doing the points. And one thing that particularly concerned me was that it said it was by right. Someone on their lot, if it was eligible, and one of my questions is how small or how big is a lot that could be divided and have an ADU or a duplex or a triplex or a fourplex put on it. But that it said they could have all the ADUs that are allowed and duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes by right. And that means from previous conversations with our planning director that there will be no public notice. So immediately I'm thinking, in the area that I live, my lot is 4/10 of an acre. I don't know if that's one that would qualify, but the people next to me have even a larger one. And I think, what if they would decided they wanted to put some duplexes and triplexes there? And it's by right. It won't even be, I won't even be notified, and neither will any of the other neighbors, and they'll just do it. I object very strongly to that. I purchased my property back in 1982 because it was in a single family residential zone. I wanted space. I wanted my own home. I didn't want to be living in an area with apartments and duplexes and triplexes. So is this something that we're working towards? I mean, are we accepting that? Because it looked like you were saying that was, well, that it was one of the things you got points for on the 30 points.
I'm sorry.
I think we'll
What-
address comments after you're done with public comment. Ms.
Pardon?
Osborne. I think that we'll go ahead and address your questions after you're completely done with public comment.
Okay.
Mr. Manager, sorry,
so
real quick,
for your-
real quick, sorry. I would like to have all the audience come out and have the questions and then have her come up instead of the back and forth. So when Ms. Osborne is done, the next person who wants to come up with questions, she'll answer each of your questions.
Okay, here are
Sorry.
my comments.
Okay.
For my elected officials who represent me here in this town. When I see by right and people can divide their property and put these on it, and I see climate change and I see equitable housing, I am opposed, and I ask you to just oppose it because those words are in it and it's leading to getting rid of single family residential zones and ruining my neighborhood.
Thank you, Ms. Osborne. Are we getting questions down? And just for clarification, there is 5 members up here, and I did not state at the beginning of the meeting that Councilman Kaag is absent tonight. So if we could note that, please, on City Clerk. Thank you.
Louise Gliotto, Yreka. And I copied the pro housing, the point area. And I highlighted some of the points that concerned me. And I feel, and I strongly feel this, that our housing should be controlled by our people here. I think we should not leave everything up to Sacramento. I think we should have local control. And I think that people in the community ought to have a voice about something that's going on. And some of these points really concern me. And the one in particular, which I mentioned at the last meeting that I went to, that's on page 79, and that's 2E, absence or elimination of public hearings for projects consistent with zoning and general plan. That was one of the reasons why I did an application to be on the planning commission, because I thought this was really, really important. But there are several other items that concerns me that I'd like to see out of this plan, or us to opt out of those points. 1A, 1B, 1E, 1F, in particular, eliminating parking requirements for residential areas. I recently visited my aunt in Martinez, which is in Contra Costa County. She lives in a very lovely old residential area. And when I went to visit her, I could not find a place to park my car so that I could schlep my luggage up to her house, because I was going to stay for an extended time. I had to walk a block. There were so many cars parked there. And they were even parking in her driveway. And so I'm concerned about that. That can really blight a neighborhood. It looked like a parking lot at one of the malls. That was so bad. So that one in particular, really interests me. 2A, again, 2E, I'm really very strongly feel about 2E. It should be up to local control. Our planning commission and to the people in the community should be able to go before the planning commission and the city council and have input on it. 3D, 4A, 4C, 4G. And that would be it. So I would strongly urge us not to take this. When people hear grants, they think it's free money. Grants always have strings tied to them. They always tell you how to do things and you have to do them their way, like we found with the swimming pool. I would like to see growth here in the community, but I would like to see growth controlled by the citizens, and the citizens have input. And the grants aren't free. All of us taxpayers are paying for those grants. So it's not really free money. And I think we can do this without having to get money from Sacramento and having them tell how we have to live and how our communities look. Thank you.
Thank you.
I feel so tall. I'm Debbie Bear, Yreka, and I only have a few concerns, but I can tell this was a really extensive, detailed project for our planning director, and I appreciate all the time she put into it.
Hey,
It's
Deb.
wonderful.
Deb, can you put the mic up a little bit? Raise. You're here for years. How did you not know this? There we go. Oh, that. Ooh.
Okay, I too had a few questions, concerns, page 82, 4C, regarding how the city disposes of or sells its lands. I think it's nice to be able to use it for a project that's going to include more housing and development. But the other side of the coin is we're responsible for the funds of the community, that the taxpayers that have paid for this. And I'm not sure that that's reasonable for us to discount property that, not allowed to look at you, sorry. Discount property that they have paid for.
Which one are you on?
Page
4C.
82, 4C. And let's see, there was another one regarding 4A, the trust funds. Is that coming from the developer fees that we're discounting?
Just so you're aware, Ms. Baird, if it has a minus essentially next to it and eligible, it's not up for consideration here this evening.
Sorry, missed that. Page 81, 3D, promoting innovative housing types, manufactured homes, recreational vehicles, park models that reduce development costs. Recreational vehicles in a residential area, whether it be apartments or duplexes, that really seems out of sorts. So that has a point. I really would not support that one, or I would encourage you not to support that one. And I wrote a few things down. I have concerns about increased crime in overcrowded neighborhoods, and we haven't addressed that at all. You haven't addressed that at all. This is taking practice. So I would like a little bit of conversation with the chief regarding if he has more calls to higher populated areas. That's something we need to allow for and consider in the future if we're going to do this. I also agree with Louise regarding overcrowding with parking. There's a couple of houses in my neighborhood that have 4, 5 and more vehicles per house, but they only have one driveway. So that is street parking. And there are times when it's definitely overcrowded. I have 2. I'm the show off in the neighborhood. Please don't forget you have the option of annexation as well. So we don't have to stack and stack and stack all these 2 stories or more complexes, perhaps we can go out as well. That's something to consider. I am concerned about losing the culture of our community, because right now we know most of our neighbors, and I like that feel. That's part of why I moved here. Are there other development options that we haven't discussed? And that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, if not, Jillian will come back and answer the questions
Okay, some of them were just.
and our comments. Some of them are comments
Yeah,
mostly.
some of them were comments, but for the couple of questions that were in here, so I guess some misconceptions with current state law. Currently, every single residential use, so not single family homes, every single residential use in the city by law is allowed to have 1 accessory dwelling unit and 1 junior accessory dwelling unit. We cannot tell them no. That is a current state law.
I'm sorry, Ms. Lucchese, this is Jason Ledbetter, the city manager. Is that what use by right means?
Yes,
Thank you.
to a degree, yes. It means it's listed as a by right in the state codes. So the question came up for ADU lot size. We by law cannot restrict and have a minimum lot size for ADUs. We cannot restrict that. That is a state law. That has changed. In addition to that, that's a similar thing for parking. So parking, I cannot by law require parking for accessory dwelling units or junior accessory dwelling units as they sit now. There are some changes in state code that is actually removing parking requirements by law. I have to take a look at the comprehensiveness of that right now. So for example, we cannot restrict people from converting garages into ADUs. We cannot require them to replace that parking space as a current state law with the ADU law. And then we bring up the missing middle item, which I know was brought up last time. And so I said, if you're not comfortable with that one, you don't have to do it. But one of the things to just really kind of bring up with the new state laws with SB 9, as well as a number of other housing laws, is right now, if you have a single family home, by law, you can convert that into a duplex. ADUs kind of do that. So a junior ADU is when you convert an internal room in your residential house, whether it be duplex, triplex, quad, you're allowed to put basically an efficiency unit in your residence. So basically, in turn, turns it into an additional unit. So using the current state laws that are in place, there is no single family residential anymore. It's gone. You cannot be exclusively single family zoned because of the new state regulations. So that is just what it is right now. So theoretically, if you are in, the Discovery neighborhood, places like that, and you have a single family home currently, by law, you are allowed to convert a portion of that to a JADU. And by law, you are allowed to put an ADU, in a sense, turning it into a triplex property.
Can I ask you a question then? Since you're talking about that, do we have any, as residents, do we have any control over if somebody wants to buy a house and put a Verbo or an Airbnb next to us?
We do not have any short-term rental ordinances in the city.
Thank you.
That's a separate item which we may talk about if that's something you find is an issue. I think currently we only have 4 short-term rentals registered with us at this time. I know the county is considering a comprehensive ordinance, so we can tackle that whenever.
No, I'm just speaking to the lack of the inability for me to control a neighbor in a $400,000 house next to me that has a Verbo.
Now, if you, so if your neighbor builds a JADU and or a ADU, they cannot rent that out for short-term rental because the purpose of that law is for long-term housing relief.
Understood.
So if someone does build the ADU in the backyard or converts their garage, it has to be lent out for a long-term rental. And a long-term rental is defined as any rental that is more than 30 days. So they can rent it month to month if they so choose. The city council can change those definitions within the code. I don't recommend that at this time. It's something we'd have to comprehensively look at with our code updates.
So is there a lot size requirement for these additional units?
No, you cannot require a minimum lot size. You cannot require setbacks except for 4 feet off the back and 4 feet off the sides. So our current setbacks in every zone do not apply to ADUs or JADUs. So they're exempt from that.
Juliana, if I may, can we let her finish? Then I close public comment and then I'll come back to the council.
Oh, sorry,
Thank you. That's okay. Thank you.
sorry. Just trying to,
I haven't
tackle
closed
them in
public
the first
comment,
place.
sorry. That was my. fault.
yeah,
Damn it.
so a couple of other items, they weren't, just clarification. Some of these are already in place. So one of the items was the Surplus Lands Act already requires us to advertise city lots and sell city lots to anyone who wishes to build affordable housing. That is a current state law. So when you put up a lot for sale, say the, like, you know,
Say that we're currently in negotiations in closed session. Ultimately, it doesn't matter what lot we may sell to someone. If the local government or any government in the state of California sells a lot, and let's say it's zoned commercial, so there is no residential zoning. There still has to be documentation that if the zoning does change, that is it low income or workforce housing
low
as
income.
as priority on the property.
Yeah, so that is a current law with the Surplus Lands Act. The other one was there was a discussion, there was a comment on 3D. Excuse me. Promoting innovative housing types, manufactured home, recreational vehicles, park models. You already allow this in your current code. So you already do this. So we're not proposing a new program. So you are getting points for something you already allow. The recreational vehicle, we do allow with a temporary use permit in our current code, whether you like that or not. It's just what's in the current code and you get points for it. Another one that you currently do. But I can't remember it off the top of my head. There's a couple of them that you actually already do. And then just to clarify with the parking, the one parking item that's in the matrix does not mandate no parking. So if people build a house and they want to include a big driveway, they want a 4-car garage, they are allowed to do that. What that does is it doesn't require them to put that space in if they don't choose to do that. Most people do that here. Most people want their vehicles out of the snow. And so most people elect to have a garage and or large shop with multiple garage space for vehicles. I'm not too actually concerned about that item for our community. I don't think it brings up a specific issue in terms of density and then in terms of the desirability of housing. I think a lot of people here have to drive more because we're a rural setting and context. And we see most of our developments include covered parking regardless of that. But on the topic of making developments more affordable, the Siskiyou Crossroads, which is a county project, did actually come to us partway through the process and utilized an existing state code to circumvent our parking requirements to lower the number of spaces because asphalt is very expensive. And so not requiring so many spaces does lead to some cost savings for larger scale housing. One of the things that we talk about in planning is that low income housing units, people who are going to be utilizing these spaces are 47% less likely in the state of California and rural areas to even have a vehicle and therefore would not utilize the space to begin with. So there's a couple of different things there. I know it's really complicated to move through housing in California. There are several hundred different housing laws that have taken place, at least in the last 4 years. And so keeping up with all of them is very difficult. But if you do take a look at the current state regulations, there is a lot of these programs that are already allowed. It's just if you locally allow them or not. And some of these are actually talked about in the housing element and have been asked for from our stakeholders who contributed to the housing element public input.
I think you've covered the questions and I think we should kick it back to the mayor.
Thank you. Okay, I will close public comment and I will go back to city council for any other questions. I will go to Councilman Baker. Any further questions?
So I don't have any more specific questions.
Or comments?
But I'm not convinced that this is good for Yreka. And I am definitely pro-growth. I'm not convinced that by receiving this designation, it would necessarily assist or it would not prohibit. By not having the designation, I don't think that it's going to prohibit housing. But that's just my opinion at this time. Because there is no deadline for applying for this designation, and it is relatively new in the state of California, I really would like to see how it shakes out with some of the more rural communities that are also applying for it if they get these designations. I'm just concerned that there are too many onerous requirements for us. So.
Thank you. Councilman Davis?
Well, I think Julie Allen's done an excellent job of presenting this. But I'm kind of with Colleen. I don't really think our community needs it today. Maybe later, but I think we need some time to do some more observation and more reading.
And Mayor Pro Tem McCoy.
Do you want me to ask this? Do you want me to go ahead and ask it? Or you're gonna ask it when you get there?
I was just gonna say before, but you want to address that now?
No,
no.
no, it's fine. That's
You
fine.
want me to ask?
No, you can ask it when you're
Okay.
ready.
We're doing most of these things already. So and this isn't a guarantee. Getting the pro housing designation is not a guarantee they're going to get any money. But there are a lot of dollars being thrown in Sacramento right now at housing. We have a housing issue. We have people that were displaced by the McKinney fire. They went to Weed and then they were displaced by the fire down there. I think we owe it to our population, if we do want to help them, to work toward building affordable housing. A lot of people move up here. I mean, the people that are moving up here and buying, they've got the money. I mean, they'll sell a house, they'll sell an average house in San Diego, 1,200 square foot house for $1 million, $1.2 million. Then they come up here and they put $300,000 or $400,000, $500,000 down. And they've got $700,000 that they can invest and put it away. I believe that since we're doing a lot of these things anyway, getting the pro housing designation certainly isn't going to hurt us. We have an onerous state government. That's not going to change. Our state government, California, is not going to change. The only way we're going to change it is to move out of the state. And this program's been around, and a lot of these things, this has been around since 2019, and a lot of these things that we're talking about in here were implemented by moonbeams by Governor Jerry Brown. So it was even before 2019. We've been doing them, the ADUs, all this kind of stuff. It's been going on, and we have 39 million people in the state of California. We have 31 million registered private vehicles. Another 250,000 government vehicles, and that doesn't count semi trucks and things like that. We're just talking about the small things. You know, we got issues. We got issues with parking. That's why you see parking garages that have an elevator in that. They're a single story parking garage in some of the larger cities, but they have an elevator that goes 3 high, so they can stack 3 cars in the area that they could stack 1. And on a small parking lot, you can get 60 or 70 cars. All of these things are issues. The crime is an issue. Although I would probably say that we don't have densely populated neighborhoods in Yreka or Siskiyou County. My daughter lives in a fairly densely populated neighborhood. It's the largest borough in New York. I think it's about 3 to 4 million people in hers, in a city of about 9 million. That's large population. And are there problems with crime? Yes, there are. We do have park models. You'd be surprised to drive around town and take a look at some of the, well, they used to call them double wides. Now they call them modular homes because they're 2x6 construction that are up, and you would go, no, that's a home. No, it's not a home. And we have them all over. We have triplexes, we have duplexes. No, we don't want to lose our homey neighborhood feel, but all I hear and have heard for 37 years is we need to get more jobs. We need to get more people here. And this is not from people like me that are new. This is from your old timers. They're born here. They're third generation, they're fourth generation, they're fifth generation, and they want to see our community grow. Some, we don't want it to be 20 or 30,000. We couldn't grow that big anyway. We don't have the water for it. We don't want it to be 50. We don't want to be Medford, and we don't want to be, we don't want to be Reading, but, it'd be nice to have some more things here. And the only way we're going to do that is to attract people to live here. And the only way we're going to attract people to live here is jobs. And you've got to have places for them to live. And I mean, I guess I can look at some of the things and look at them and say they're onerous, but I look at a lot of the other stuff that we do here as a council, and it's much more onerous than what we're looking at here. This is, again, this is an idea. It would help us in the event that we might apply for financial assistance. Again, I will go back to the two people that want to build here, and they'd like to build between probably 30 and 80 homes. They would love to see financial assistance like that. So, I would have to say that since we're already doing a lot of this anyway, and if you've ever dealt with CEQA, I don't know if anybody has in here, but if you ever dealt with the California Environmental Quality Act, you would go, oh my God, you're going to streamline it for me? I mean, I'm not going to wait 8 months or a year. Hallelujah. If I can get it done in 60 days, I'm going to be a happy camper. And then my money can work for me. So, I mean, they're things like that I do believe it does help. So thank you very much. I yield my time back.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem McCoy. Just a brief comment from me is I'm thankful the ADU unit is in place. It's not going to affect whether we go forward with this, because I have a mother who I probably will have to put an ADU unit on my property. And that's a better option than paying $4,000 a month to go to a facility. So I'm thankful that this ADU is in place, because I'd rather have my mom near me take care of her. So I'm thankful for that the restrictions have lessened. I have a big lot. You wouldn't be tell. It would be back there, but I do have a big lot. So I'm thankful. I'm looking to right now, actually. I think if we did not move forward with this, we're going to drop the ball on our city, our citizens, our growth, our future, our lack of people being able to find housing. You already see 4 or 5 cars and houses right now. That's not a news, it's already going on because people cannot find housing. They're going back to live with their parents, relatives, people with their wages. 6 people are living in a house to be able to afford the rent. So we already have several cars at several houses. I see it every day. Like Pro Tem McCoy said, we already are doing a majority of these. It's already state law, state of California, which we live. So I think it's much needed for the future of our town, because if we don't move forward, we're going to stay stagnant. So if there's no other questions from the council. Thank you, Juliana. Thank you for all your hard work.
Yes, thank you.
And all your knowledge of it. Okay, so I'm going to go to the council for the recommend city council action. Motion to adopt the consent agenda of direct city council of the city of Yreka presented. Did I miss it? Let me go to that one because I missed it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's on the top of page
Okay.
3.
Yeah, I found it. Motion to approve resolution CCR 2259A resolution of the Yreka City Council authorizing application to and participation in the pro-housing designation program.
Is Councilman McCoy so moved?
I have a motion by Pro Tem McCoy. I will second the motion. Mayor Middleton. Now we'll go to Councilman Davis. Councilman Baker.
No.
The motion fails. If we can note, I would like to bring this.
Well, no.
Oh.
The motion, well, you need to take the vote. I think we need to take the vote, don't we?
Yeah, can we complete the vote?
Why don't we take the vote?
So we have 2 no's.
2 noes and
I
2
mean,
yeses.
yeah. So we're deadlocked.
Yes,
So
we're deadlocked.
it was Rosenberg's call for, I don't have my Rosenberg. Does it call for, can we
Bring it back when our next
can we
council
bring
members
it
here.
back when we have a 5th vote?
I think you have your attorney on the line, but I would say
Yeah.
that just having been here a year, I would say that it just failed. And ultimately you are always welcome to bring things back and reintroduce them.
Mr. Henyon, any comment?
Actually, I've never had this happen before, amazingly. So I would have to research it to give you an answer.
Yeah, it's
Okay, I would like to bring this back at not the next meeting, the following meeting.
And I'll be the second sponsor to that. So you have 2 sponsors to put it on the agenda.
That way, hope it gives more time. Maybe we can. The no votes would maybe take some items out that they don't like and really revisit this. And when we have a full council.
so we have the first meeting in February. Is that correct, Mr. Mayor?
You want to go to first or second? Let's bring it back to 21st, please.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. All right, so moving on to new business, number 7. This is going to be Matt.
This is going to be Mr. Bray.
Mr. Bray, sorry. That was unprofessional of me. Agenda title, request to hire 2 additional parks maintenance workers and authorize a supplemental budgetary appropriation for the positions. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Members of council, Matthew Bray, I'm your Director of Public Works. Tonight, the city manager and I bring to you the request for budget appropriation to add 2 full-time maintenance workers assigned to parks and our recreation areas. Currently, as I noted in the staff report, we have 1 full-time benefited employee that works in the parks. And then we have a part-time worker that picks up the trash in the mornings for 4 hours and cleans out the bathrooms. And then during the summer, we've been lucky to at least get 1 seasonal worker to come in for about 3.5 months. Part of the problem with that seasonal work, which I spoke to there in your agenda packet, is the state of California Department of Motor Vehicles changed the provisional licensing laws. So a number of years ago. So if you're under 18, you can't throw your under 18 buddy in and go driving around in your pickup truck, which means you can't go to work together in your pickup truck and you can't drive around together at work in a pickup truck. So historically, I've seen the seasonal, when I first started there down at in the parks, I'd be assigned 6 to 8 seasonal workers during the summertime. So wrangling cats kind of deal, but we got a lot done when we had those workers. We don't have those anymore. So that was one big change with the DMV changing the laws on us. Secondarily, it's more difficult for us to find anybody that wants to work during that summertime period when it really peaks out. Years ago, kids used to leave Yreka and go to college and they'd come home for summer. We don't see that very much anymore. There's more money to be made down in the city where they're going to school. So it's been layered on for many, many years. The parks have been hit budgetarily for many, many years. It's the easy cut when the difficult budget time comes is to just look at the parks and say, oh, let's water them less and let's mow them less. And as long as I've been with the city coming on 15 years now, I've just seen a constant decline in the parks. And I'm very prideful of our parks. That's where I started my career here at the city. So tugging on my heartstrings. I'm in love with those open spaces we've got, and I'd like to polish them like a jewel, and we don't. You've seen it the last 5 or 6 years. They're not up to snuff. But you can't blame the one employee that's out there trying to keep it up to snuff. It's the budget. And so in talks with the city manager, over the last year, I've voiced my concerns and my wants and my needs. And I really think it's a need in our community to pay attention to our parks better than we have with our budget for the last 10 years. We've had to brown them out because of water regulations from the state coming up from Sacramento and that kind of thing. But there's so much work to be done in the parks every day, even when there's snow out there. With extra folks, we can go plow. I think we've only done it 2 or 3 times. Go plow the snow around the lake so you can still go walk on a December day. That kind of thing that we just don't do because we don't have anybody to do it. The beauty part about this request is that while it is 2 full-time employees, one of them would be funded entirely out of the water budget, which would go back to the rate study. Greenhorn Reservoir was built for water, for backup water. And we're currently working with Pace Engineering right now to put that reservoir back online as water. The recreation area around it, which is commonly known as Greenhorn Park, was built around the water reservoir. So we flipped that back into water. We can adjust the rate study to include that one employee through there. So it's not a big hit to the general fund. The other employee would be funded from the general fund with the budget appropriation. And that would be on top of the one employee that we have now. And honestly, I've said it for years, that's about half of the people I need out there to do the job that I want to see done as your director of the parks. So I'm sure City Manager Ledbetter may have something to add.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Bray. This is Jason Ledbetter, the city manager. I think when I first started here, I had some members of the community reach out to me and had some concerns about a multitude of things, but they mentioned one item, and that was beautification of the planter boxes on Minor Street. And there are some things that are very big structural problems for the city of Yreka, for any city, for any county in the state of California. And then there's smaller low-hanging fruit items, and I consider this to be a really low-cost beautification measure that we can take to enhance the community for everybody involved, whether that be at Greenhorn or the multitude of our urban city parks around town, or as I've asked Mr. Bray, because it has been a challenge in the past, is that one of the other items I'd like to see these 2 individuals partner up on is during the springtime, you'll notice, I notice it on Oregon and 4th Street. We'll get weeds growing up out of the sidewalk, and we'll get weeds growing up out of the street. And I can't stand it. And it drives me crazy. And these 2 folks would be tasked with helping to start to knock that down. And, you know, I think we get from our community, I don't know if Jerry's still here. You know, I think people have pride for the city of Yreka, and this is a relatively inexpensive way to enhance that. So we're requesting, we went through the finance committee. We had complete buy-in, I believe in, at the finance committee. And so we are here this evening making the request for 2 additional parks employees.
Thank you, Mr. Ledbetter. Any additional comment? Okay, so it's the 2 parts. Should I go read the part B or go ahead and 7A?
Oh, no, we'll just stick, if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor, if we can just stick to 7A, and then if you have any public comment.
Okay, I will open it to public comment.
Debbie Baird again. That bad penny that keeps coming up. One, will that eliminate these two employees? Will that eliminate the Park Coast?
We'll answer questions after public comments close.
That's right. Okay. And the other comment basically is, did council discuss contracting out these services to determine, and I don't have a preference either way, but to determine which was more economical regarding the cost, additional cost on the city, if it'd be more feasible for contracting the services out or the employees plus the CalPERS or whatever it's called nowadays. So that's it.
I'm hoping it's working. I think it is. Here.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's working, yeah.
Maybe.
So I do want to know if one of the full-time employees that'll be working at the park will help our park be safer picking up needles so our children can play. That would be really good. And then the second thing is, and yeah, are we going to get rid of the park host who do nothing for a lot of money that we pay them? Or is that the part-time or part-time employee we are talking about? I'm hoping not. Thank you.
Thank you, Don Marie. Any other public comment before I close public comment? Okay, I'll close public comment and go back to Mr. Bray or Mr. Ledbetter for answering those two questions or 4 questions or whatever it was.
So question number 1, no, it does not remove the park host position or program, which was built by council a number of years ago.
Which I believe is $4,800 annually. So it's a relatively low cost. I think it's a $400 a month position to have somebody at the Greenhorn Reservoir as a host. But it's not out of the question to entertain that conversation if this council so chooses to. Sorry, Mr. Bray.
And then to Mrs. Baird's question, which was the second question she had.
Contracting out.
Contracting out was tried. And I'm not one that says we tried it once and it didn't work, so we shouldn't do it again. I'm not that kind of guy. Tried it and it failed a number of years ago. That could be revisited, but the costs rose after the first year of that contract with the gentleman that we hired. And they just kept escalating and escalating and escalating to the point that we took it back in-house.
Just to follow up on that as well. I mean, I think that when you look at facilities within a government, I think it makes a lot of sense that the state of California contracts out the labor around the courthouse here in the city of Yreka. But I think for the city of Yreka, you get into some questionable actions with your unions because you're taking away employment and then you're contracting out with escalating costs generally that are substantially higher with some of the landscaping companies. And then when you have the expectation that maybe, hey, I can get one of my union employees to step in and take on something because it's not getting done by the contract labor, that's a pretty hairy and difficult subject matter.
What you are doing is supplanting. You already have a person who's a member of a collective bargaining agreement who works for the city who does that job. So when you hire 2 more or hire a service to come in, you are supplanting that. You are therefore violating any goodwill you have, and you're violating a collective bargaining agreement, and you're going to be subject to all kinds of litigation.
And then we have when I first started, sorry, Mr. Bray, I'm going to tell a story. When I first started, I had the opportunity to work with our part-time employee at the parks, a young man who, what a remarkable guy. But it's a race, and yes, he picks up needles. If they're there, the day that I was with him, there were no needles. There were feminine hygiene products, used feminine hygiene products scattered around Minor Street Park that we picked up that day, but there were no needles.
I'll touch back to the needles question that when I started for my career here at the city almost 15 years ago, and I was the guy wiping down the toilets and mopping the floors and picking up needles 15 years ago. I was picking up needles every day. When I trained my seasonals that came in to help me, I had to teach them how to clean the bathroom so they wouldn't get a needle stick. So it's been here for at least that long. It's worse now. I agree. The park host does pick them up. I've seen the buckets. I've picked up the sharps containers from her. Luke, the gentleman that you mentioned, he picks them up. Andy, who's been attached to the parks for about 3 years, picks them up. When I go to the park on my time off or at my lunch break, I look for needles. I very rarely find them. So I'm not saying it's urban myth or anything like that. Yes, they're there. I've picked them up. I pick them up if I do see them, but it's not every time.
But
I think
just
it's gotten a bad rap over the years. It was really bad there for a while, but we're doing everything we can with the 1 or 2 people that we've got, so this would help with your question to the needles. Yes. Perfect. It's a complete beautification project, as City Manager Ledbetter spoke to. And I think the last question was tied back of yours to the park host, which, yes, I spoke to a minute ago. That was a council program that was designed to man that park, to assist the visitors with their reservations and their postings, and do some minor pickup, cleanup stuff, which she does. The program has worked in that manner since we started it. But it's not a maintenance position and it's not a cop. So they're not there to police folks. They're there to say gently, hey, the sign says you should put your dog on a leash. That kind of thing, just politely, but that position is not a police officer. It's not enforcement. So I think that answered the questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bray. And just a reminder for our council members to wait for comment when I call on you. Thank you. Thank you. Should have gavelled you. So I will close public comment and go to our council members for a comment, and I will go to Councilman Baker.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing this forward. I am a member of the Finance Committee, and so I heard this proposal on December 21st. And I was amazed at the different areas in Yreka that are considered parks that I had never considered, like the triangle down on South Oregon Street. So there is a lot of territory to cover. And so I just want to thank you for bringing this forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Davis.
I think I did have a question also about like what Paul said about the collective bargaining agreement, what that's, if we decide to do this, the funding goes from whatever we get our funds from, the general fund that pays our collective bargaining agreement, I would expect. And the last item I have is the summer employees. If they're 18, you can have them, but if they're younger, then you cannot.
It's the way it's fallen out lately, is that the provisional driver's license, it's kind of like, I know when I was turned 16, I ran down to the DMV that day and got licensed so I could drive my truck that I already had.
Right.
It's not really happening that much anymore. So then the provisional, if they come in under 18, so come in at 17 and get their license, they're provisional for a year. They can't have anybody in the truck with them. So it
Right.
killed
My
our
son
summer
worked
crews
on the
completely.
parks.
Most of you recall the pile of college kids that worked at the city during the summer, and you'd see them out in the weed eaters and driving around with all the trucks. And it seemed like there was a lot more public works people,
Right.
During the summer, because there were, we had 8, sometimes 10.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilman Davis. Pro Tem McCoy.
Yeah, I'll just piggyback as quickly as I can on what Council Member Baker said. The Finance Committee did hear this. We felt that the office has done a wonderful job in looking for funding so that it doesn't all come out of general fund. The fact that we're going to have so many greenhorn means we can take it out of water, which is an area in which, we don't have trouble spending it, I'm sure, but there tend to be more income in that stream than there are in general funds. So the other thing is, this has been something as a council person that I have people complain constantly about the weeds, about the dead grass, about goose poop out at Greenhorn, about people complain about Minor Street until we got Tammy to work on that. So I think this would be a very positive step for the city. And we have sat in meetings here again I have for 4 years, and heard our public make good points about we need to take care of our parks and we need to keep them up. And this is a way that we can do it. And we have a lot more acreage and little parks than people imagine, I think, or know of. So, but the finance committee wholeheartedly, to a person, supported this and supports it, even after asking the tough questions of our finance director and our assistant ex-finance director and assistant city manager, about the money. Where does the money come from? What are we looking at down the road? And we were comfortable with the addition of the two.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy.
Thank you.
Mr. Davis has another question.
Well, no, I want to make
Or
a
comment?
comment here.
Okay, comment.
I'm all for it too. I just want you to know that. I just concerned about the financing. The finance committee says we've got the dough. I say we should go. And I also think another thing, if we have a presence at the park, like you, that your truck down there and you guys working, the things that like happened to Miss Osborne may have a less chance of happening because we have a city presence there. It's not a law enforcement officer, but it still is a city presence. And I think that's a really good thing. So, and I think you should bring your big truck and make sure that that's seen, because there is a bunch of folks that have at the creek bottom there and the willows and the hillside. They walk their dogs. There's a lot of them.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Councilman Davis. Okay, I don't have any comments. Thank you for looking at this. I think it's much neat. Well, I do have a comment now. That's probably the top 3 complaints in Yreka is, why is Minor Street Park dead? Why is it overgrowing? Why is Greenhorn looking bad? It's the parks and it's the top 3. Not getting the other 2, but it's one of the top 3 because we have beautiful parks there and our citizens enjoy them, and they don't enjoy them when they're looking really bad and shabby and they don't go out to use them. So I think it's a great thing. So I'm going to go to the council, or actually, recommend city council action. Motion that the city council approve the request to hire 2 additional parks maintenance workers and authorize a supplemental budgetary, I'm on the right appropriation for the positions. And I will go to the council for a motion.
I will move that we accept Mr. Brave, Mr. Ledbetter's suggestion of adding 2 park employees.
We have a motion from Councilman Davis. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
And a second from Councilman Baker. I will go for roll call. Councilman Davis. Councilman Baker.
Aye.
Pro Tem McCoy.
Aye.
And I, Corey Middleton. Thank you. Now we'll go on to the.
Mr. Mayor, before you go on,
Yes.
Uh,
Mr. Ian.
I think it would be, having looked at the rules, if you were to specifically call your resetting of the planning matter a motion for reconsideration, it would be appropriate.
I think this goes back to the 2-2.
Yes.
And so I'm sorry, Mr. Henyon,
I hear what he
can
said.
you
When the mayor said we'll put this back on in February, that is
reconsideration.
back on for a motion for reconsideration.
Okay, and thank you very much, Mr. Henyon. And then just for the mayor and the council, can we push this back to the first meeting in March on that item, just because of people being out of the office for that meeting?
Sure. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to 6A, correct? For the. No, he wants, Mr. Henny wants me to go back to another item for a recall for a motion.
It was just correcting the manner in which the minutes are to reflect. So.
Oh, just a correction. Okay,
Yeah,
so I don't need to read it.
nope,
Okay, just the correction.
yes.
Do you have that, Mr. Ledbetter and Retta Hogan?
Yeah, and we can confer with Mr. Henyon on the minutes if necessary after later in the week.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Henyon. Okay, now we'll go back to 7B, agenda title. Resolution designating reservoirs from gain on sale of real property to fund 95% completion study for preliminary design and engineering of the Ringy Park and Pool Complex. An estimated cost of $500,000 to $750,000, and authorizing the city manager to issue a request for proposal for qualifications for engineering and architectural design services. The city has since 2021 realized one-time money gains recognized on the sale and potential sale of city-owned properties. The city manager and public works director are requesting the designation of those reserves realized from sale of real property to be dedicated to the Ringy Park and Pool Complex. To obtain engineering and architectural plans and are shovel ready for construction bid and available grant opportunities where the city and project may be eligible applicant. Additionally, the resolution authorizes the city manager or his designee to issue a request for proposal for qualifications for engineering and architectural services. The budget for these services estimated to be somewhere between the range of $500,000 and $750,000 for a 95% completion study.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the city manager, Jason Ledbetter. And so council member McCoy had thrown the idea out in the past, I think within the last 4 to 6 months, as far as the property sale and creating an account for that money to go into to finally get engineer design done for Ringy Park and Pool. And I know that this topic has been obviously very well discussed over the last 4 years, ever since the failure of Ringy Pool. And so we have a litany of information and public outreach that was done on 2 separate grants. There was an original grant specifically for Ringy Park that looked at the entirety of the park and moving the fences around for the Little League field to allow for tournament play from out of the area. So it was a regulation field. And then also moving the building, the pool building to line up with the existing parking lot. And so we have a ton of documentation with what the public desires to see at Ringy, but we lack the engineering and design, which ultimately doesn't give us a true cost to what it will take the effort to fix Ringy Pool. And so this is the first step towards ultimately either determining that we will in fact save the money ourselves or try to go seek another grant in conjunction with some other funding stream in order to finally rectify fixing Ringy Pool.
Thank you, Mr. Ledbetter. I will open up to public comment.
The heater? Or is it?
Luis Gliado, Yreka. I have some questions and comments to make. I know that that money is available, at least it appears to me that there's money available because you've sold some property. So we have money to pay for the engineers and the architect. But my question to the city council and those especially who sit on the finance committee is if it's determined that we're going to do that, does the city of Yreka have several millions of dollars stashed away someplace where they could pay to have a pool put in? And also, do we know in terms of our budget where that money would come from? Would we taxing people's homes or do sales tax? We'd have to have fundraisers. And also, if we did do the pool and we were able to raise the money to do the pool, and do we have the money for maintenance? Because from my understanding, I've only been here 15 years. So it was my understanding that one of the reasons that the pool was in such bad repair is that the city didn't have the money to do regular maintenance. I could be wrong, but that's my understanding. So those are my questions. I'm not opposed to a pool. I think it would be great for the kids, but I'm also very conservative in my own budgeting, and I don't do things like I wouldn't go out and buy an expensive car like a Mercedes or Tesla if I didn't know how much the insurance was going to be, what the upkeep would be, what the gas prices are. So I think we need to look at whether or not we can afford it as a city, and if so, where we can get the money. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise.
Good evening again, council members, Mr. Ledbetter, Jerry Stalker. Just wanted to congratulate you on having the help that you're going to need to make the parks what they should be.
Jay, can you raise the mic up, please? Sorry. Thank you. Okay, now we can all hear you.
So,
Thank you.
My comment is about the pool, but it's also going to be a little bit about the previous agenda item in regards to the needles. And when the pool is active again, which I have no doubt someday it will be, going around and picking up needles is a reaction to an action. There's a problem that is underlying in all this, and I still don't know that we're doing or seeing what needs to be done to solve that problem.
Jerry, with all due respect.
This is
I
about the new pool.
Okay,
This is about,
can we stick to the pool? Because I closed.
yeah, this
Okay.
is about the
Okay.
new pool.
Okay.
The new pool is a park. And is specifically about that, because when that park comes active again, there's going to be more children in that park than any other park in town. And my only comment in regards to that is instead of just being, instead of just reacting to an action, I think we should be proactive to the problems that are going to lie ahead. Because if we don't take on a proactive attitude about the drugs and the crime, then we're always going to be just reacting to an action. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mariatri. We do need a pool. And I know we probably need more money too for the pool. So how about a vacancy tax? We got a lot of vacancy buildings around here. And if we start taxing them, things are gonna happen. First of all, we'll get money. Because Shop Smart's been empty for how many years? And nothing has been done, nothing. And then second of all, we've got all these shopping carts that we threaten to find, but I haven't seen any money. I haven't heard any money. And Walmart continues to completely ignore us. So I'm thinking we need to step up those fines big time and make them feel it. So we need money, there's money. And also, whether we don't want to hear it or not, we really need to, because we promised Rob Pachenko we would revisit this. And we have not. We have not brought that back to council in a real live way. We have not found out how much money Mount Shasta has made and or Dunsmuir has made from their district, their marijuana distribution places. I can't think of the name of it. dispensaries. We really need to revisit that because that might be money that we are neglecting. And I know that everybody says, oh God, we don't want that in town, but I'm sorry, it's already here. Marijuana is already here. Marijuana is legal. It's already being delivered here. So why are we not getting money from that? So thank you.
Thank you. And I'm assuming the comments are ideas for funding of an idea for the pool, correct? Okay, thank you.
Jan Osborne. I just want to make my point that once a study is done, which was one of the major thing that was neglected when the grant was done, that we didn't have that. But then a revenue stream, and the city manager has mentioned that as well. I would like to know, has anybody thought about what will be the revenue stream for this pool? To actually build it, it's something that we might be able to get a grant. But if we pay $500,000 to $750,000 for a study, and we don't have where the money's going to come from assured, I think the money would be wasted. If there is a revenue stream already planned, and I hope if there is, that it's not raising, doing a parcel tax or a sales tax on the people. So I don't know if your finance committee has talked about that or not, but I'd like to know what the plan is to finance the pool and maintain it and operate it.
Thank you, Jan. Any other public comment? Okay, come on down. I'll let you come back. I won't be the big mean person that people think I am.
This doesn't answer the problem necessarily, but you and I had a conversation recently about the potential long-term goal that this might take to accomplish. It's not in front of us now, but it might be someday where there's actually a community or a nonprofit set up for people to donate to the long-term life of the pool. Seems a little bit outlandish, but I think it's a possibility. I know there's enough people out there that really care about something like this, where if the word's out, if it's done correctly, if everybody is on board, I think you'd be amazed at what you might see. If you were watching or heard about Monday Night Football, the gentleman that got hit, unfortunately, his foundation raised $3 million in about 24 hours. So a lot of them really impressive things can be done if you give it to the people. Thanks.
Thank you, Jay. Any further public comment? Okay, I'm gonna have Mr. Ledbetter or Mr. Bray come back to answer the questions. And then I'll go back to the council. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is Jason Ledbetter, the city manager. So just to touch on the one item that continued to come up was money. And so unfortunately, that is the failure of the last, in my opinion, the last pool grant is that this was not looked into. So we don't know how much the maintenance is because we don't have engineered plans. This isn't a study, this is actually design and engineer. So this is basically having a plan set that every single year or every 3 years or every 4 years, we can update the cost. As an example, city of Yreka sold the Yreka landfill to the county of Siskiyou. And it's the only uncapped landfill in Siskiyou County. And there's a lot of landfills, believe it or not, in Siskiyou County. All of our garbage is sent to Oregon because we don't have an active landfill. But we have an uncapped landfill at the city of Yreka, and the cost is escalated. year over year, it's more and more expensive to close that landfill. And right now it's $9 million. And the reason I know that is because all I had to do was take those design engineered plan set and have the engineer, Lawrence and Associates, update those figures. And it took them about a half an hour because they had the design and engineer. So then you knew exactly how much it was to shut that landfill. And that's what we're attempting to do here. We need to know how expensive it is to fix the pool. We need to know what the options are. Do we want the Cadillac of swimming pools or do we want the Kia of swimming pools? And so we're not going to have the answer on how much the cost is or how much the maintenance is until we get this document. And once we get this document, the council may decide, you know what, the swimming pool is not a good idea for this community because the cost is too high. Or they may say, you know, let's put that on the shelf and wait for a grant to become available. Or they may say, we just want to run full steam ahead. What are the options to get that level of revenue in? And at that point, we would start investigating those options. But I think that it would be a poor course of action at this moment to start determining how we're going to get money when we don't even know how much money it is that we need. And I feel like we were having this similar conversation in April and May and June. And so what we're asking for is that when we sell property that's not budgeted for sale, that we can just take that money because we know that we want to get engineered design plan set to fix Ringy Park and Ringy Pool. And ultimately, this document will tell us exactly how much it's going to cost to do that and how much it's going to cost to maintain. And then it will be up to the city council and ultimately to the public to determine whether or not they want to pay for that cost.
Thank you,
Just
Mr.
add one
Ledbetter.
little
Mr.
thing,
Bray?
One little bit there to City Manager Ledbetter's statement was, when I look at design and engineering plans, I don't see that as a waste of funds unless the project is never built. If we do it next year, it'll cost this much. If we wait 10 years, that engineering is going to cost that much more due to the inflation. So we in Public Works do sometimes end up sitting on design plans for a number of years. But by the time that the funding does roll around, the grant hits or the pot of money from the state comes, we have those 95% plans. We dust them off. We throw on the inflation with our engineer team. And as Jason says, it takes a half an hour and you're ready to go again. So I just wanted to, for transparency, I think the only way that we could see this pot of funding that we're considering to utilize wasted would be if the city never decides to build the pool. So that's the gamble. Those are the dice on the table. And as you said, it'll come back to the public and to the council to make that decision.
Thank you, Mr. Bray. I will close public comment and I'm going to go to council members. I will go to Councilmember Baker.
Thank you. First of all, Councilmember McCoy, thank you for bringing forth the idea of taking the funds from the sale of property to be used for this. I appreciate that. The number one thing that I hear in my neighborhood, and I live across the street from Ringy Pool, is we need the pool back. And I've heard that since the pool closed. And I think that this is a very prudent way to move forward. We need to know the expenses that we're looking at. And this is the first step. So I'm very excited about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Baker. Councilman Davis? Comments, questions? No? Pro Tem McCoy.
I'll just make one comment because I know people will look at this and say, well, why don't you use the money for pay for salaries or something like that? This is one-time monies. It's one time only. And, you know, my 30 years in education taught me that you don't hire teachers or aides or any staff when you only have enough money to go for 1 year. And so I appreciate the support of the council. I think this is the way to go. Where we really failed, and we did fail dismally, was that we did not have plans. We did not compare apples and apples in the last pool. we compared apples and maybe, I don't know, coffee or something, but, and that's not, I mean, thank you to Robin Richards. Thank you to Mary, who worked on who worked on one grant, Robin worked on both, but I see it just as a good use of one-time monies. You know, thank you.
Thank you, Pro Tem McCoy. Yeah, there's areas, that were probably not so good on the last proposal for the new pool. Location, cost, we didn't really know how much, so this is actually a better plan to really step back. Some citizens wanted it, a lot of them didn't, and it went down in council, but that's the past. So moving on to the future with Ringy Pool, the interest came back again more than we saw a couple of years ago when I took my seat here. When we moved away from Ringy Pool, then people were mad, but we did not hear from them before. We started hearing from them after, why don't you fix that one? Why don't you fix that one? So now that we've heard from the public, they really want Ringy Pool back. It's nostalgic, it's memories, and it's so sad to see it. It really is. I spent some time there as a youth, and so has many people. And it's not only about the pool. I want to remind the citizens, it's about the whole park. We want to look into redoing the whole park, the fields. They want to bring, we're, I think, 5 feet short, the fence line, 15 feet from the
There's Little League
Little
regulations, yeah.
League, so they can have tournaments like Medford. They draw in huge amounts of people. If you drive by 5, they're playing baseball, but is it 18 Park, I think it used to be. But what does that bring in? Hotel rooms filled, our restaurants filled, our shops, sales tax. Yeah. They bring in tons of people traveling for these baseball leagues. So we could redo the whole park. So I want to remind people that it's just not about the pool, it's the whole park we're looking at. And I think this is a great step moving forward to revitalizing the whole park there, and it needs it. And we have some dedicated sports parents that work their butt off out there to maintain it and keep it going. And so they're very excited about this plan. And that's what I will end with. Thank you, guys. Okay, so recommended city action. Motion to adopt a resolution 2023-03 designating reserves from gain on sale of real property to fund a 95% completion study for a preliminary design. I'm gonna go here. And engineering for Ringy Park and Pool Complex, an estimated cost of $500,000 to $750,000. And authorizing city manager to issue a request for proposal qualifications for engineering and architectural design services. I will go to the council for a motion.
This is Councilman McCoy, so moved.
I have a motion from Mayor Pro Tem McCoy. Do I have a second?
Councilman Baker, I'll second.
Councilman Baker for the second. I'll go for roll call. Councilman Davis,
Aye.
Councilman Baker,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem McCoy,
Aye.
and me, Mayor Middleton, aye. Motion passes. Thank you. It's very exciting, very exciting. Police Chief. Agenda title, restructuring the response to animal control calls for services to ensure 24/7 coverage, expand training and provide more versatile resources at Yreka Police Department by hiring a sworn patrol officer in lieu of an animal control officer, currently a vacant position. Police Chief Gilman is requesting a transition the vacant animal control officer position into a sworn police officer position. The reason for this is a call volume statistics and evaluating options to perform effective patrol, including animal control officer functions. He feels, this feels weird, but that's how it's written. I feel I can more effectively utilize and a more versatile sworn police officer through all shifts instead of dedicating Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. full-time position for an animal control officer. Good evening, Chief Gilman.
Howdy, Mr. Mayor. Hello, council members. So basically what you said, I keep my stuff short, as you know, but we're looking to restructure this. Anyone familiar with return on investment? We've looked at the call volumes. Animal control calls are extremely important in the city of Yreka and especially the citizens, as we've heard tonight on some of them. But animal control officer handles about 2.3 calls a day. And they work a set schedule. Animal control officers also don't have a lot of the authorities that a police officer has. So if they come into a confrontation or they have to make an arrest or deal with something, they have to call an officer anyways, who ends up going out there. Between 5 and 8 o'clock in the morning on weekends, officers have to handle these calls anyways. So what I'm looking at is just restructuring it for return on investment. We had a while back, we got a school resource officer. We thought that was extremely important. It was supposed to be backfilled through other means. Usually what I bring to you, I don't bring problems, I bring solutions, and I brought money with that. So it wouldn't cost us any money. It ended up costing us a third because one party backed out. But it was important enough to us to continue with that position. So I lost a patrolman on the street. At the same time, we also lost our animal control officer. So I've been short both those positions. Looking at ways to fund this, I thought about working with Yreka and the city manager, that if I transitioned that animal control position into a police officer position and let all officers handle animal control calls 24 hours a day, which they're doing right now anyways, and they have been for over 8 months. It has a very limited cost right now, and actually cost savings if you look at bringing another officer in and an animal control officer. So I just looked at it as a return on investment. I thought the best choice would be transition it into all officers doing animal control calls. That also helps with the staffing level since I am short an officer. As we know, we heard earlier tonight that someone called for some officers and they were told that none were available. We had a couple of violent encounters this weekend. I had an officer injured on one of the violent encounters. We're not always available because we're short staffed by one position. So it'd be nice to have that other position, would help with those problems. I'm not going to read it. I usually speak from the hip, but there's a lot of benefits to it. The fiscal impact is approximately 30 to 35,000. As we talked about the park position, that's $400 a month or something roughly. And I think we get better service for Yreka with officers handling over 20 calls a day and doing reports on top of those. Animal control handling a little over 2, close to 2.5. It just makes more sense to put that on the officers. That only adds 0.38% workload on each officer per day. It's nominal. And they're, like I said, they've been doing it for 8 months. So that's basically my proposal, and I'm open to any questions.
Okay, I'll open it to public comment first for questions for Chief Gilman.
Mariatri. We definitely need 1 or 2 or 3 more police officers on our force. We really do. The animal control officer did not do the job. So that white dog that's been here for 6 months killed a Chihuahua today, ripped it in half with another dog. So I would really love to be able to work with a vet to tranquilize some of these dogs, get them when they need to be gotten, not just let them run amok like today. Because if that was my Chihuahua that was ripped apart, I would lose my mind. You know, I can't even imagine. My heart hurts just reading the story. We have got to get officers out there, as many as we can afford. So please bring them back on. Thank you.
Thank you, Don Marie.
Dan Osborne. This officer, if hired, as I understand, it will just be an additional police officer and will still get the same kind of response when we call. I have called, from yesterday to today on my walks, I called YPD 3 times about dogs at large in my neighborhood. And every time I heard there's no officer available, nobody's available. When there have been, that's when I first met Officer Strello, is when he was animal control. And he was the one that came after 2 dogs charged me when I was walking right down my street. I was almost home. And that happened on 2 different occasions. He said he knew who the dogs belonged to, and he would talk to them. Okay, that's the policy, I guess. Well, the dogs did it again. And Officer Strello, or ACO Strello at that time, came. And I said, I think it's time to cite these people. They know that their dogs are getting out. They've said they're going to take care of it, and they haven't. The problem I see is actually the enforcement. Well, the basic problem is compliance. The animal control laws are pretty easy to follow. And there's also just the protocol, the etiquette of being a responsible dog owner or pet owner of any kind. And I feel that if the officer is going to be driving around just doing regular police duties and not on the ground, and especially at Greenhorn Park, on foot, going around and seeing all the loose dogs, all the dog feces, and citing people. I mean, I think it has to be a big crackdown all at once. Just say we're, zero tolerance is what I think needs to happen. And then when people get the idea that they have to be responsible for their pet, I don't know how many times I've heard, oh, I don't need to have it on a leash. He never bothers anybody. Well, he's right up at my feet sniffing around. That bothers me. It bothers me a lot because you never know what's in a dog's mind. It's probably just reactive. They're not thinking anyway. So if it's just going to be an officer driving around like they usually do, and there's not going to be anybody actually out walking like through Greenhorn and some of the other parks and actually citing people until they get the idea that there is a consequence. It's not just a warning, and then you do it another time and it'll be another officer, and he may not even know that you've already had 6 warnings. And it's a very important issue, I think. So if it's somebody that's just going to be driving around in a patrol car, I would not be in favor of it and be calling it the substitute for an animal control officer. I think it's a good idea to have somebody 24/7, but we do already. I mean, that they tell me when I call, well, there's no animal control officer, the police are handling it. They're already doing that. And I don't know if an extra one will make it any better, but I'll tell you, it's very frustrating when you call and the dispatcher says, there's nobody available.
Thank you, Ms. Osborne. Any further public comment? Jerry's gonna come on down.
Yeah, sir. Jerry Stalker. My only concern would be that if there's complaints that we're not able to handle all the police calls, that we would drop dog calls for people calls, which we should in most cases. When I was up here a minute ago and I congratulated what was his name for getting the employees that he needed to staff the parks. Same would be for you. Without a doubt, everybody knows we need animal control. But I don't really know that we have enough police officers either. And I think that's obviously a decision that would come from the professional. I would like to see, I saw a whole bunch of police cars on the road today, a whole bunch. I mean, I was a little bit shocked. I was all kind of scared. I wonder how I feel. But please feel free to interact with business owners anytime you want, especially me. Because I would rather see you guys come in my store than the people that want to steal from our store. And I think if you could interact with the public a little bit more often, and some of the officers could, that it would make us feel better. Like there's a presence that we don't necessarily see. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, I will close public comment and I'll bring Chief Gilman back to the podium to answer questions or comments or concerns the citizens have.
Sure. No, they were very good questions. One of the things I am trying to do is get more on the street. Just like Mr. Stalker was saying, we built a homeless liaison position to help with the homeless, which is a huge issue for Don Marie, and he's out there, he's doing it. I know you have an issue with the dogs. You called me a lot. Our dispatchers tell you we don't have someone available at that time, so you don't stand there on the street and put yourself in danger trying to catch a dog when the officers are busy arresting somebody. It doesn't mean we don't handle the call. We handle every call we get. Sometimes it takes a little longer to get to the call, but our average through the year has been less than 3 minutes response time to all calls. There is no calls that we don't handle. So we have to remember stories, your story of the Chihuahua, that's tragic what you heard, but I was actually working with that and it's different from what you've heard. So, you got to remember that public perception sometimes isn't the actual perception. And I don't tell people what happens because we don't discuss cases that are under investigation because it could jeopardize a case. So we just don't bring it up. Sometimes it makes me an easy target. So what I'm just trying to say is I'm just trying to fill the positions that I think there's a need for. Having more officers to handle these dog calls means we might be able to get there while the dog is at large and issue the citation. That's what officers do. If it became a confrontation with an animal control officer, he would have to call for an officer who might be on an arrest or be busy. And that situation may go away while he's waiting for an officer to come handle the enforcement. So that's why I think it's a better return on investment to make an animal control officer, a police officer, than an animal control officer. I actually think department-wide, that would be a better use of resources because the police officers are the busiest positions on the police department. And they do a very good job. I had a very good conversation today with a lady that was present Sunday when our officers were injured. And her great grandpa and her grandpa were chiefs of police for Yreka, the very first 2 chiefs of police of Yreka. And she came in and thanked me and told me how fast the officers were there. They were there within 2 minutes when her life was in danger and took care of business. So it was nice to hear things like that too. So there's always 2 sides to the story. And I think that addressed all the questions I had. Mr. Ledbetter probably wrote them down, but I think I addressed them.
I think there was just one on, I think Miss Osborne made that, well, it was more of a comment on whether or not we could get zero tolerance and major enforcement all at once in regards to animal control.
That's a good question. That might be a difficult one to do as far as a zero tolerance because dogs have a mind of their own. It is an owner's responsibility, but sometimes dogs get out, go into another yard and get injured in that yard. It doesn't make the other people guilty. But should I write you a ticket for your dog going and getting injured? Now your dog is injured and you have to pay vet bills. Should I write you a ticket because your dog crawled through a fence that broke? So I don't know about the zero tolerance, but I do agree with her that we should be more actively on the street. If we see a dog at large, we should try and find an owner. We should follow up on licenses so we can identify owners. So I do agree with that. I just think it's a hard statement to say, yes, that's what I'll do from now on.
Great, thank you. Now I'll open up to the council for questions to Chief Gilman. I will go to Councilman Davis. You're up.
I'm up. All right. Now, in our collective bargaining agreement, we have an animal control officer, correct? So we're not really losing that guy. We're going to have that animal control officer position available.
Restructuring it. I'm changing it over to add a patrol officer to handle those duties where everyone will handle the same duties.
Now, are you going to train? Do you have training for the animal control officer?
Animal control officer has what's called an 832 course that gives them the authority to write a ticket. It doesn't give them authority to make an arrest, a physical arrest because they don't have the equipment for it.
I understand that.
All police officers have that training first. That's part of the academy. So it's the exact same training.
They have training to handle animals, is what I guess I was asking.
Sure, I understand. I thought you were asking about the 32 course. Do we have an animal control course that the state puts on? It's not a post course. We went through this with the last animal control officer trying to find him a school. And all they did was discuss the laws of citations for animal control violations. There was no hands-on how to catch a dog, anything like that. That's the exact same training police officers have in the academy. As far as specific training for catching a dog, we do that in-house. We have catch poles and gloves, and that's an in-house training.
Well, there are more things than cats and dogs that are animals, like
Correct.
deer, lions.
We do those. I handled the deer call myself last week at the school for a deer stuck in a fence. I was the one that got her out. We are trained in that and we do in-house training.
So is this going to be, I guess I should ask Jason, is this going to be an increase in salary for that position?
I think the animal control position will be tabled, I guess, for the position will hypothetically exist in our inventory of position control forms and could be brought back by council if this plan did not work out. And so, yes, technically, a patrol officer makes more than the animal control officer, but I believe as Chief Gilman stated at the beginning, the school resource officer position is Officer Quigley. And when we intended to enter into that contract with 3 different parties, one of the parties backed out. And so we pay a third of that contract to have a school resource officer at the schools here in the city of Yreka. And we never filled Officer Quigley's position. And so it's a net neutral or a net savings to get rid of the ACO position and add a patrol officer in this instance.
All right, so we have funds to do that.
Yes, yep.
Thank you, Councilman Davis. Councilman Baker?
Thank you. Chief Gilman, how long has the animal control officer position been vacant?
I want to say roughly 8 months. I think it was around last February, possibly. Could have been March, but I think it was February when we lost the position, maybe longer than 8 months.
And during these 8 months, your patrolmen officers have been handling the animal control calls. And have you noticed an increase in complaints about how the calls are being handled or they're not being handled?
No, no more than any other time that we get the calls.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Davis. Pro Tem McCoy?
I think that both Councilman Davis and Councilwoman Baker asked good questions. I do like the idea that it's offsetting. The 55,000 is already budgeted, so we're not going to pay the full salary because we're offsetting the ACO. I also like the fact that you have somebody that's uniformed that's going to be out there to be able to, because I think people, when a cop stops me and an ACO stops me, it's 2 different things probably. You know, I look at them differently. I also like the fact my dogs don't run on my schedule. And so, and I know that my dogs, I've said before, my old Shepherd, she got out before and luckily some kids would find her and call us, but you know, she'd get out at like 8 or 9 at night and, you know, she would have jumped in the back of your squad car with you and come home. But, you know, and I know people who have been fined because their dogs have gotten out a second or third time. I've had friends that have had them fined. So I really think it's a good idea. And the finance committee on this was unanimous. Councilman Baker, myself, Emily Aldrich, the finance director, the city manager, as well as the assistant city manager, that we thought this was a good way to restructure. I agree with Mrs. Osborne that, you know, we do want to see, you know, we just want to see, you know, I don't want to see more dogs picked up, but we want to see the chronic ones handled. And I've got them in my neighborhood too. So, you know, I mean, and it can be a pain in the neck. So I appreciate all the time you put into this. Thank you very much, Chief Gilman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pro Tem McCoy. Yeah, it's funny because I think when we're talking about this in our meeting, that dogs don't know 8 to 5. So at 5:01, they escape and our animal control officer is off. It's going to be a regular police officer to handling it. And I'm not going to mention the previous animal control officer, but he mentioned a situation to me that it was an incident up at Grizzly Court. Do you remember that? I don't know if you were on at that
I'm
time.
not sure if I remember that one.
I don't think you're on at that time, but there was an aggressive German Shepherd up there. The animal control officer responded. The lady's hitting him. So he doesn't have a gun or weapon to defend him. So he has to wait for the officer to get there. So it's a very dangerous when people's pets are, and you know, the accusations, or if they're getting in trouble, if their dogs be confiscated, they react. And it's very dangerous. So I think and they can't carry a gun, the ACO. So I think it's a very, very good thing that's before us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Right. So if I have no other further questions, I will go to the council for the recommend city council action motion to approve restructuring the response to animal control calls for services to ensure 24/7 coverage, expand training, and provide more versatile resources at Yreka Police Department by hiring a sworn police officer in lieu of an animal control officer, currently a vacant position. I will go to council members for their wishes and for a motion. Have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion from Councilman Baker. I'll make the second. Already made the second. So now I'll go to roll call. Okay. Councilman Davis. Councilman Baker.
Aye.
Pro Tem McCoy.
Aye.
And I, Mayor Middleton. Motion passes. Me. Okay, we are now to Mayor Councilman reports. This is AB 1, 2, 3, 4 conference and meeting report verbal of any. Do I have to read all that? Maybe
I think we just want to know if any council members have any reports from any commissions that they sit on.
I think we sit on any this year recently, so I don't think there's any. Okay, so we'll go to item number 9. So city manager and staff report. City managers and staff may make brief announcements or reports at this time. Do you want to wait, hold on a second. Sorry. I don't want to have chief come back down, but here, even back up there. We had a question for you. I'm sorry.
And the
And
chief will be
we'll have
back
you come
down
back.
to give
Oh,
his department.
That's what I just realized. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah. So I think
Sorry.
we had a request and this is Jason Ledbetter, the city manager. Thank you, Mayor and Yreka City Council members. We had a request last meeting from Councilmember Kaag, give an update on the shopping cart ordinance. So our police chief will do that when I'm done here. I just wanted to point out a few things. We have a Lola meeting here in Yreka at Black Bart's on Wednesday, 1/11. The week of February 6th is the city manager conference in Carlsbad, California. So I just want to let everybody know, I know we have a meeting before that, but I will be out of the office most of that week, but obviously available and working. Anybody needs to contact me. Thursday, January 19th, at the Yreka Fire Department, we will have the next ad hoc fire meeting. The topic will be medical call response. The Finance Committee met obviously December 21st and discussed many of the items that were brought forth this evening, Ringy, the parks and the ACO. And I just want to commend the council, appreciate the decisions that were made here tonight on all of those items. I believe they improve the community. And finally, the RFPs for City Hall and the soil cleanup on Foothill are both posted on the city website. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ledbetter. All right, Chief Gilman's going to come down again. An update on the shopping cart retrieval code enforcement efforts.
Well, again, Mr. Mayor and council members. So Councilmember Kaag asked us about the shopping carts. And so I got a hold of our code enforcement officer and Lieutenant Booton to get an update. So we've issued citations. I know a comment came up earlier about fining people. We have issued citations. We've issued $8,850 worth of citations to business owners for not picking up their carts. One store was a problem. We've been working with that store. They're in a management crisis and they've changed managers, I think 3 times since we started this. They have a new one now that's actually been working with us. He's cooperative. We're going to continue to issue them citations to corporate, but that's what they prefer so they can do something. We're working with that store also to get to join another store that has what's called RAM. It's a shopping cart retrieval program from, I believe it's Chico. One store is using it, which is our second biggest violator. They now have that going. So they have someone who's been picking up carts now. So hopefully we can get those 2 stores on board with that. So we've got the fines I told you about. The shopping carts are doing good. The other stores have been cooperative with the retrieval process. As far as the tags, so the ordinance required that they have the identification tags with certain information on it. this is required by law for us to cite people that have possession of that shopping cart. We can't do it just because you have a cart that says Walmart. It has to have a serial number and a phone number and all this stuff. So as they're ordering new carts, I think 3 of the stores are actually getting those on the new carts as they get them. So it is working. They're starting to go through it. It's an expensive process. Carts are expensive. We've, code enforcement has picked up 101 days of shopping carts in the last year. So each day she picks up carts. It could be 30 to 40 carts, could be 3 carts, depends on what she finds. But 101 days out of the last year have been spent picking up carts, which is pretty good when she only works 5 days a week. We have a lot of carts. So no matter how many we pick up, there's still more. But it is getting better. We have less carts at the city yard. I think it says on here that one store had, what's that? It's on email. One store, I believe, had 49 carts on just the day after Christmas, and one store had 22 carts the week before that. That's good. We used to have 300 carts in the city yard. So it is a huge improvement, and fines have been issued.
Great. Thank you. Wait, before you go, we had a question. This came, you can read it. I don't know. I don't know. I have to read it.
No, it came up in one of the other,
I have to read it.
it was a question that came up. I was just gonna ask you, can you address crime in the more dense populated areas of Yreka?
It's kind of a loaded question that I wasn't prepared for.
Well,
But
No, but no, I'm not trying
Right.
trying to be, it's not a gotcha. I'm just saying,
No.
do we have more densely populated areas where you go, oh, there are,
yes,
oh, okay,
yes. So say large apartment complexes.
gotcha.
We get a lot of calls there compared to residential streets up on Cedar and Terrace and, that area. Because they're more densely populated, different cultures, different whatever. It's the same with businesses, South End businesses. Whenever you densely populate something, your call volume goes up. I know I've been working with city manager a lot. I think the mayor was in one of my meetings. We're at a record year for calls right now. We're 9% above last year, which was a bad year last year. And I think a lot of it has to do with your comment earlier about people being displaced. And as being in real estate with Corey, I know that, the vacancy rate in the city is important for people to look at. We have almost no vacancy rate right now, and our calls for service are way up. I think it's because Yreka is more densely populated than it has been in the last 10 years or more. So I would say, as a rule of thumb, without preparing for your answer, yes, the more densely populated something is, the higher crime is going to be.
Okay, I just, yeah, I appreciate that.
You bet.
Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I will go to council member statements and requests. Looks like Councilman Davis made a pit stop, so we'll go to Councilman Baker.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to just wish everybody a happy 2023. And I'm just looking forward to a positive year for Yreka. And so I did want to ask a question that I hope I will be told is inappropriate if this is not the place, but the park host at Greenhorn, is that position considered a city position, a city employee?
There's no benefits or anything. It's a flat $400 a month payment. And then obviously the living situation is free. But they're not a CalPERS position.
So is that a position that would be evaluated by city personnel?
I'd have to look back at the city council created the policy and contracting for that position. So we can certainly take a look at that and see whether or not that employee has had a review. I think the intent of that position, I think, was a little bit jaded into the understanding of what a park host was for a campground, because the Greenhorn Reservoir is not a campground. And so people apply for these positions, let's say at Camp Siskiyou, Lake Siskiyou, or at different camps around the state of California. and you attract certain people that come and they manage a park and that people are camping there and they basically do what our park host does. But since we don't have a campground, my understanding is that we've had a very hard time attracting anybody to the position. And so we don't have the pool of employees or the pool of people that have any interest because they don't have anybody to, I guess, hang out with during the day or kind of engage because they're going to be living out there alone. And so I know that in the past, since my tenure here, we've gone out at least one time for that position because the contract was coming to an end. And we only had the same person interested in applying. And so I believe that position should be posted if it wasn't already posted, and I'll have to check with HR because I believe that contract comes to an end again February 1st. And it wouldn't surprise me that we may only have that individual, but it's an interesting position because I think people get confused. They think that it's 24 hours a day. And I think that the big win for this position, because I'll be honest with you, I go out and play disc golf now at Greenhorn. And I go out there for work, obviously. And then I go out there and walk my son around the reservoir. And I'm always shocked at how clean it is. Personally, that's just my personal experience. I know other people have different experiences, but every time I go out there, I generally see our park host picking up garbage and cleaning the bathroom. And so I have a very positive outlook on our current park host. I know some, maybe some people do not, but the big win, in my opinion, and I know this may sound pretty nominal, but opening and closing the gates. And to do that would be it would be much more difficult based off of we close at dusk. I mean, I believe we're kind of open and close it. You know, the sun comes up, the sun goes down. So there's an expectation. People are walking that park like it's their backyard every single morning. And so there's an expectation that that gate's going to be open when they show up. And so I think we win, quite frankly, with that alone, and that there's a presence to ask people to leave. That's what that person does is you'll notice if you go there that there's, you know, if you were to go there in the evening, there's not going to be people camped out in their cars in there because they've been asked to go home. And that's what we get from that park host position. But I'll certainly double check with the director of public works and see if that person's been given a review and if it's in the contract to give them a review or not, and get back to you.
Thank you.
That was a very long-winded answer.
Anything else?
That's it.
That's it. Thank you. Councilman Davis, any comments? Statements, request?
I do not have a comment.
All right. Councilor Pro Tim McCoy.
I'll keep it quick.
I'm looking at Councilwoman, former Councilwoman Baird. It's considered a volunteer position. Council pushed for it before I got on. I've been on 4.5 years. It's a $400 stipend, along with a couple other things, for 4 hours a day of work. The only evaluations that I think were done were informal evaluations when the council asked for them because they do not work for us. They are considered a volunteer. I know we went round and round about it. I did with the past city manager, and I think council went round and round about it. But I mean, that's at this point in time, I accept that it's a volunteer position. So, but and we've had people out there, they all have done a good job, but we have had complaints on people. And then, you know, those are some of the people you don't ask back, or if they apply, you don't bring them back in. So I'm gonna make it quick. You mentioned Lola on the 11th, which is always fun. January 19th, the ad hoc meeting is at 8 a.m.
7:30, I believe, Ms. Hogan.
You always do that to me. Okay. I know.
7:30 a.m.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's that? Great. Okay, I appreciate it. The only thing that I would like to ask is, do you know when new council member training, what month that will be in Sacramento for California?
Yes, unfortunately, I reached out to Charles, who will be attending Lola, who's our representative in the region for Cal Cities, and I let council members Baker and Davis know. Unfortunately, that filled up. So before I did go out on vacation in the 22nd or something, we had an email back and forth with Charles. And there's waitlisted to get on, and it doesn't sound like there's going to be an opportunity to get that training because it sounded like Southern California was booked as well.
And then I would just like to ask that I think Supervisor Ogren's gone, but I'd like to continue with the council to have dialogue with Supervisor Ogren, council, yourself, Director of Public Health, and the Director of OES for to see if we can get the county to step up to the plate on a on a shelter with us, a warming shelter with us right now. In lieu of the fact that we know that eventually we'll have a shelter, we may have a couple, but for right now. So, and I'm not trying to blindside you. I think we've had some great discussion. I think we need to take it further. We had great discussion before Christmas with Supervisor Ogun, I think. So.
Yes, and if you don't mind, it's Jason Ledbetter again, the city manager. Mr. McCoy, tomorrow we'll have the COC meeting. And I have already spoken to Supervisor Ogren this evening requesting that you, myself, and council member Kaag have an audience with her to discuss this exact thing.
Thank you, Pro Tem McCoy. I'll keep it short. One request I would like to put back onto the agenda is the needle collection containers that we said we bring back. So if we can
Just for clarification, we went down two alternative paths at different points. Do you want to talk specifically about the kiosks and the possible placement of needle collection kiosks within the city of Yreka? Or do you want to talk about going down the divergent path of trying to outlaw a county program in the city of Yreka?
Well, even if we outlaw the distribution, the needles are still going to exist because they're
Absolutely.
at store, they're at pharmacies, they get them there, so they're still going to be thrown out. So it doesn't matter. What I'd like to bring in front of us is just part one of getting the
kiosk
kiosk. Mhm.
collection. Perfect. I
yes.
can do that. And would you like the county representative to be here for that?
Yes, please.
Okay.
That's okay with the council.
That's correct. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We don't want her to be.
I'm sorry, but Councilman McCoy can't be heard and he needs to be able to be heard.
Sorry about that, Don. I just don't want, I want to be respectful of Miss Skillen's time from Public Health. She's only a messenger. And we should be respectful of our relationship, both as city councilmen and as people that are giving public comment to her when she is here. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I agree. We're not going to allow her to be a target, to be a punching bag or be belittled. I will not allow that. So that's for sure.
And Mr. Mayor, so I will reach out to Miss Skillen and based off her time frame, have her at a future meeting.
Thank you. And then I'm going to make it short. Happy New Year to everybody. 22 was a hard one for my family. We lost my dad, but I'm looking for the future and for good things, and I'm looking for great things for our city. I welcome our new council members to our, even though they're really not new, couple in, to join us here for the great things and the not so great things. But anyways, I'm going to end with that and wish everybody a good evening and thank you for coming. Meeting
Good
adjourned.
night.